Chapter 121, An Unexpected Surprise. After Ning Fengji boldly raised the bid on the mysterious gloves to 4 million gold soul coins in one swift move, the entire hall fell silent. No one dared challenge him. Imperial Marshal Gi Long, visibly displeased, could only grimace as he watched Ning Fengji secure the gloves. He rubbed his temples, frustrated. Across the room, Cheng Xiao's brow furrowed in confusion. Ning Fengji's sudden intervention had completely caught him off guard. With the last item claimed, the auction drew to a close. Cheng Xiao, Dugu Yan, and Dugu Bo followed the maid into a cozy parlor to complete their purchases. "Your Majesty, here is the soft armor you requested," the maid said with a respectful bow, placing a beautifully lacquered box on the table after receiving the gold soul coins. She gave a final polite smile, then slipped out of the room. Dugu Yan's eyes lit up as she lifted the box to her chest. She linked arms with Dugu Bo and fluttered her lashes in delight. But before they could savor the moment, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Cheng Xiao turned just in time to see the maid reappear, this time escorting an elegant, easygoing middle-aged gentleman and his small retinue into the parlor. The unexpected arrival promised more surprises yet to come. A chill breeze swept across the mountain plateau as two figures appeared at the edge of the clearing. The first was a white-haired elder in flowing robes, Ning Fengji, Grandmaster of the Seven Treasures Glazed Sect. Beside him stood a younger man, his expression calm and unyielding. Chen Xin, the sect's sword Douluo and personal protector Douluo to their master. Their arrival made it clear that the mysterious glove at the center of the auction was about to change hands. Dugu Bo's heart skipped a beat at the sight of them. He had hoped to secure the glove himself, and Ning Fengji's presence threatened to upend his plans. Still, he knew better than to show his displeasure. With a deep bow, he pressed his palms together and said, "Sect Master Ning, Sword Douluo Chen Xin, welcome. I'm honored by your attendance." Ning Fengji returned the gesture without a trace of arrogance, stepping forward to close the distance. His smile was gentle, as if smoothing over some earlier friction. "Mr. Dugu," he said, voice warm, "I must apologize for my interruption during the bidding just now. It was ill-timed." Dugu Bo chuckled, brushing aside the apology. "No need for apologies, Sect Master. Forgive me if I seemed curt. Today's proceedings have been intense." Chen Xin watched the exchange silently, his sword strap faintly clinking as he shifted his weight. The two Protector Douluo systems stood in perfect balance, one at the master's side, the other holding the home front. Last time, it had been Bone Douluo Gu Rong who accompanied Ning Fengji. Now it was Chen Xin's steady discipline that flanked their lord. With pleasantries exchanged, the three men turned their attention back to the auction dice, where the legendary glove lay waiting, its fate about to be sealed. Dugu Bo's eyes flashed with icy contempt. With the Qibao Glazed Sect's vast treasury, 40 million is chump change. Why on earth should you be groveling for an apology? Even though Ning Fengji enjoyed the backing of a sword Douluo, Dugu Bo refused to be intimidated. His dissatisfaction was plain. Ning Fengji offered a polite, almost amused smile and shifted his gaze to Cheng Xiao at Dugu Bo's side. He was about to demand the young man's identity when a sudden chill passed through the crowd. Sword Douluo Chenshin, Ning Fengji's silent sentinel, had frozen in place, his pupils narrowing to slits. "Why is Rongrong's gold card in your possession?" Chenshin's voice cut through the murmur like a drawn blade. Ning Fengji and Dugu Bo exchanged startled glances, then both turned their attention to Cheng Xiao. The boy's hand hovered over his jacket pocket, where half of a gilded card peeked out, its embossed emblem unmistakably that of the Qibao Glazed Pagoda. Ning Fengji's expression darkened with a father's dread. He took a cautious step forward. "Explain this," he said quietly, but with iron resolve. "How did my daughter's gold card end up with you?" Dugu Bo's heart sank when he saw the object in the young man's hand, a gold card embossed with the Ning Sect seal and loaded with unlimited credit. His mind raced. Had his daughter really given away something so valuable? Or was there a darker truth at play? "Sect Master Ning, Sword Douluo," Dugu Bo said quickly, stepping between Cheng Xiao and Sword Douluo Chen Xin. "This must be a misunderstanding." But Chen Xin paid no heed to his words. Blade poised at his side, his gaze was as sharp as a drawn sword. "Boy," he warned, voice cold, "tell me how you came by that gold card. If you lie to me, don't blame me for executing summary justice. Cheng Xiao remained perfectly calm. He reached into his robe, withdrew the gold card, and held it up between them. A slow, confident smile curved his lips. Senior Sword Douluo, I did not steal this card. Ning Rongrong herself gave it to me. What will you do about that? Chenshin's eyes narrowed. He had been watching Cheng Xiao closely, waiting for signs of guilt or hesitation, but there was none. Not a flicker of shame passed over the young man's face. Instead, Cheng Xiao stood there unruffled, as if he held all the cards in this game. Sword Douluo Chen's brow creased in confusion and growing suspicion. Ning Rongrong? He repeated. She simply handed it to you? Cheng Xiao nodded, still smiling. Silence fell over the courtyard as both masters exchanged glances. The tension crackled in the air, Douluo anxiously, Chenshin inscrutably, and Cheng Xiao unflinchingly confident. Whatever came next, the truth behind that gold card was about to be exposed. Ning Fengji recovered his composure in an instant. What should I call you, young man? He asked Cheng Xiao, curiosity in his voice. He still didn't understand why his daughter had entrusted this golden token to the newcomer, only that her choice must mean he was important. Just call me Cheng Xiao, Sectmaster Ning, Cheng Xiao replied with a polite smile. Cheng Xiao, it has a nice ring to it, Ning Fengji agreed, nodding. He held up the gold card. Can you tell me how Rongrong came to give you this? Cheng Xiao shook his head gently. I'm afraid I can't answer that, Sectmaster. If you want to know, you'll have to ask Ning Rongrong herself, assuming she's willing to say. At the mention of his daughter's name, Ning Fengji felt a flicker of concern. He watched as Cheng Xiao offered him the card back. I'll return this to you, Cheng Xiao said. Wordlessly, Ning Fengji took the token and tucked it away. Then, with a slight wave of his hand, he summoned Sword Douluo Chen. The famed Douluo started at the gesture, then reached into his robes and drew out a pair of the mysterious gloves he had just purchased at the auction house. Ning Fengji turned to Douluo, a warm smile on his face. Mr. Douluo, please accept these gloves as a token of my esteem. With that, the exchange was complete, though in Ning Fengji's mind, questions about Rongrong's secret remained. Douluo's expression darkened. You're quite bold, Sword Douluo, he said, but there was a twinkle in his eye. Since our young friend Cheng Xiao is so open-minded, I suppose these will suit you nicely. With that, he reached out and snatched the small box of gloves from Chenshin's hand, almost before the Sword Douluo realized what was happening. Chenshin's lip twitched. This old trickster had no intention of being polite. Douluo tucked the box under his arm, chuckled, and bowed mockingly. Sectmaster Ning, Sword Douluo, he intoned, we won't intrude any longer. Farewell. He turned on his heel and strode out of the hall, Douluo Yan and Cheng Xiao trailing at his side. Once they'd gone, Sword Douluo Chenshin leaned forward, frowning. That old snake certainly lives up to his reputation, he muttered. Sectmaster Ning Fengji, seated nearby, flipped through the gold token in his hand with a cool, appraising gla. And, Chenshin, he said, do you believe Cheng Xiao's story about his strength? Sword Douluo paused, recalling every moment of Douluo's performance. I do, he replied after a beat. From what I observed, he can't be any stronger than a soul-tier fighter. Anything beyond that, and his little show would have fallen apart. Ning Fengji nodded thoughtfully. Then we'll keep a close eye on him. Let no one underestimate the Douluo clan's tricks or their hidden depths. With that, the two masters turned their attention back to the quiet hall, already plotting their next move. He wasn't the least bit intimidated by the idea of facing a titled Douluo. With such an impeccable reputation and the proud Douluo at his side, this man had to be someone truly extraordinary. Ning Fengji frowned and hummed under his breath. He slipped the gold card back into his pocket and said, coldly, send someone to investigate at once. We cannot afford any delay with Rongrong's situation. I want to know exactly how he persuaded her to hand over that gold card willingly. Understood, Jian Douluo replied with a slight bow. I'll make the arrangements immediately. Ning Fengji released a weary sigh. Uncle Jian, tell me this. If you discovered Rongrong had a boyfriend, what would you do as her father? You must be joking, Jian Douluo said, eyebrows shooting up. How old is Rongrong? A boyfriend at her age is unthinkable. I'm afraid it isn't, Ning Fengji said with a wry smile. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Jian Douluo's voice emerged, low and grave. Then, I'm afraid we're in the same boat. Chapter 122. The Master Who Devoted Himself Without Hesitation, Wuhan City, Pope's Palace. Zhuhuaguan, you've broken through to level 96. How did that happen? Before Bibi Dong on the main seat could speak, the spirit Douluo Guimi beside him had already erupted in surprise. He felt as though he'd missed an important development. He'd lingered at level 95 for many years and understood all too well the staggering difficulty of advancing. Yet here was Douluo, returning from a mission, and already at level 96? It didn't make sense. Old ghost, it was pure luck, Douluo said with a modest shrug. I just happened to find the right opening and pushed through. Despite his casual tone, Douluo's eyes flicked toward Bibi Dong, as if seeking approval. He was careful not to sound too boastful. Bibi Dong's face remained an unreadable mask. After a moment's silence, he finally nodded. Congratulations, Yueguan. Level 96 is a significant milestone. If I recall correctly, your apprentice is named Cheng Xiao? Gimi, still reeling from the news, could only stare in astonishment at Douluo, and at the calm, inscrutable expression of the Pope seated before him. Have you arranged for him to come to Wuhun Hall and see me? Bibi Dong's voice was smooth but carried a clear edge of impatience. Douluo Yueguan glanced up, hesitation flickering across her features. After a brief moment, she bowed slightly. Your Holiness, though my disciple is endowed with rare innate soul power, his cultivation has been frustratingly slow. During my last trip to Wuhan City, I identified and removed the obstacle impeding his progress. I believe that before long, his soul power will develop enough to capture your attention. Bibi Dong's brow furrowed. Is that so? A prodigy should advance swiftly. Make sure he intensifies his training immediately, and Elder Ju, supervise him personally every day. Yes, Your Holiness, Douluo replied promptly. Ghost Douluo bowed in unison, and with a shared nod, the two transformed into twin streaks of light that vanished into the hall. After their auras faded from her senses, Bibi Dong massaged her temples and exhaled softly. Douluo's sudden leap to a level 95 breakthrough had taken her completely by surprise. Chapter X. An Unwelcome Return. Who would have guessed that what was meant to be a simple outing would end with her swift return, and with a breakthrough to boot? She had brushed aside the doubters coolly. That's enough talk. I'm breaking through now. A chess piece is still just a chess piece. No matter how strong, it's still only a pawn. Tiando City, Shrek Academy. Ever since Lamba Academy's merger into Shrek Academy, Master had taken refuge in Ma Hongjun's dormitory, citing his work on the evil fire investigation as cover. The real reason, of course, was to avoid running into Liu Erlong. But no one warned him that a woman like Liu Erlong could be as relentless as a pack of wolves, or as ferocious as a tiger. Even hidden away, he couldn't count on her to sit idly by. After all, this wasn't merely a tigress on the hunt. She was more like a female Tyrannosaurus. When Liu Erlong finally burst into Ma Hongjun's room, she froze in disbelief. There, slumped on the single bed, were Ma Hongjun and Dai Mubai, both still sporting the bruises and bandages from their last encounter. Yet in only a few days of rest and medical treatment, their bodies had recovered far faster than their confidence. They looked every bit as haunted as injured warriors who knew they'd let their comrades down. And that was exactly what they'd done. Ashamed to face Ning Rongrong, or Juju King, after failing to protect the team, the two had holed up in the infirmary, refusing to step outside. Now, under the blazing eyes of Liu Erlong, their last refuge felt unbearably transparent. Silence stretched between them like a taut wire, until Liu Erlong cleared her throat, steeled her determination, and prepared to demand the answers she'd come for. End of chapter. Ma Hongjun's recovery had gone badly awry. The moment his consciousness flickered back, the demonic fire inside him roared to life, teetering on the brink of a full-blown eruption. Surrounded only by men, he dared not release even an ember of that power. This was the Spirit Academy, not some hidden cave where their secrecy carried no weight. Here, any lapse could unleash disastrous consequences. He clenched his fists, willing himself to hold back, but desire is a force all its own, and he stood at its precipice. In the adjacent room, Dai Mubai slept soundly, blissfully unaware that events unfolding now would haunt his dreams forever. Ma Hongjun's heart pounded. He could almost taste the inferno threatening to consume him from within. Voice raw, he cried out, "It's happening! Please, find help quickly!" The academy master, who'd been studying scrolls at Ma Hongjun's bedside, snapped to attention. He leapt up and hurried over, his face taut with concern. "Hongjun, just hang on a little longer," he said, voice firm. "I'll fetch Flanders. He'll know how to control the flame." But before the master could turn, Ma Hongjun reached out and gripped his sleeve with surprising strength. His eyes, wild and urgent, bore into the older man's. "No more delays," he rasped. "Help me now, before it's too late." The master froze, scrolls forgotten. Somewhere deep in Ma Hongjun's gaze, he saw not just fear, but a fury poised to explode. Swallowing hard, he nodded. "All right," he whispered. "Stay with me." And with that promise, he swept from the chamber, racing down the lantern-lit corridor to find Flanders, hoping desperately that they would be in time to save Ma Hongjun from the inferno ready to break free. "I'm sorry, but I can't help with that." The sudden surge of power caught Master Li completely off guard. With a gasp, he stumbled backward and crumpled to the floor, too dazed to rise for a long, disorienting moment. An hour later, voices echoed down the corridor. Outside the infirmary door, Fu Flanders rapped sharply on the wood. "Xiaogang, it's Flanders and Erlong. We've come to see you. I know you're still worried about Hongjun's demonic fire problem, but you can't keep hiding from Erlong forever." Silence answered him. Flanders exchanged a puzzled look with Liu Erlong, who had just arrived by his side. Then, through the crack at the bottom of the door, an odd, acrid scent drifted into the hallway. Liu Erlong wrinkled his nose. "Boss Fu, do you smell that?" Flanders sniffed once, then shook his head. "Smell what? I don't notice anything." "It's definitely coming from inside," Liu Erlong insisted, covering his nose. "Is Xiaogang running some kind of experiment in there?" Their brows furrowed in unison. Whatever Xiaogang was up to behind that locked door, it wasn't going to be easy to find out. "Didn't you mention that Xiaogang has been researching Ma Hongjun's demonic fire problem lately?" "Indeed, Sister Erlong. You can't imagine how long Hongjun's demonic flames have plagued me," Fland admitted, his lined face drawn tight. He froze mid-sentence, as though a sudden thought had struck him. Sweat beaded at his temples. "Ma Hongjun, demonic fire, strange smell. Wait," he muttered, panic creeping into his voice. Liu Erlong frowned. "Boss Fu, what are you talking about?" Before she could react, Fland spun on his heel. "Xiaogang, I'm coming to save you." With a single thunderous kick, the infirmary door flew off its hinges. Liu Erlong barely had time to gasp. As they crossed the threshold, the scene inside stopped her cold. Chapter 123. Good news doesn't travel far, but bad news travels 1,000 miles. Yu Xiaogang lay on the narrow bed in Liu Erlong's room, his face ashen and his eyes half closed. His head, flat and damp, rested uncomfortably on the pillow, and a strange, sour smell clung to his clothes. At the corner of his mouth, a faint water stain lingered, as if he'd been inexplicably doused. He tried to summon his memories of the infirmary, but only fragments surfaced. Running water, a cold spray that soaked him to the bone, and then the blackout. He had no recollection of how he ended up here. He only knew his backside throbbed with pain, as though he'd fallen from a great height. Liu Erlong knelt at his side, worry creasing his brow. "Xiaogang, stop hiding from me. Look at you, what happened?" He reached out, fingers trembling, and brushed the water stain on Yu's lips. For a moment, relief and fear warred in his eyes. Then he jerked his hand back, uncertain. Yu Xiaogang's heart pounded as he stared up at Liu Erlong. Somewhere in that room lay the answers to his scattered memories. But before the question could form on his lips, a distant rumble of bad news, one he couldn't yet hear, began its journey toward them, carrying consequences neither man could ignore. He wasn't sure which felt worse, the sudden solitude of the room or the flood of memories it unleashed, memories he had fought so hard to bury. Back then, he and Liu Erlong had been on the brink of marriage, full of hope and promise, until the accident that shattered everything. Unable to face the ruins of their future, he had run, escaped to a remote rural village, hoping distance could heal his wounds. But now, Liu Erlong stood before him again, and there was nowhere left for him to flee. His injured backside throbbed so fiercely he couldn't even muster the strength to climb out of bed. All he could do was avert his gaze, willing himself to be unseen, to be left in peace. He prayed, in the silent turmoil of his heart, that Liu Erlong would show him mercy. The two loves of his youth, Liu Erlong and the cousin he once adored, had both cast him into an abyss of guilt and grief. No one had guessed that the woman he loved was his own cousin. Even now, the revelation made his chest tighten with shame and confusion. He still didn't understand why fate had tormented him so mercilessly, or what he was supposed to do next. He was lost in those dark thoughts when he felt it, a pair of cool hands slipping around his waist, drawing him close. In an instant, his entire body froze. He hadn't felt the mattress shift, hadn't heard any step enter the room, yet Liu Erlong was there, lying beside him, holding him without a word of permission given or asked. The shock of that silent embrace left him powerless, caught between fear and the faintest glimmer of hope. He was about to speak when a fragile voice cut through the night air. "Xiaogang, does being with me really make you so miserable?" She pressed on, each word laced with hurt. "Haven't you known how deeply I've loved you all these years? I've turned down countless suitors for you. I haven't seen my own father in years because of you. And this is how you repay me, by being so cruel? Are you really going to abandon me now?" At her anguish, his fists, tucked beneath the quilt, tightened instinctively. It was all because of her father, his uncle Yuluo Mian, that they had ever been separated, forced into this agonizing stalemate. If it hadn't been for Yuluo Mian's interference, neither of them would be lying here tonight, caught in this silent war of wills. Rage and resentment coiled in his chest, begging for release. But then, almost imperceptibly, his rigid defenses softened. He turned his head and froze. Liu Erlong was closer than he'd ever let her be, her eyes shining with a bold, desperate hope. For a long moment, neither spoke. After more than 10 years of loving him in silence, she could bear it no longer. Her lips parted, as if to plead or perhaps to forgive. And in that trembling, expectant stillness, he finally met him. Her gaze, Liu Erlong's voice dropped to a low, unwavering whisper. "Xiaogang, I've waited for you for more than 20 years. No matter what happens this time, I won't let you slip away again." She took a step closer, her eyes alight with fierce determination. "I won't be cowardly anymore. Ma Hongjin, me, will not let you go." Xiaogang's pulse thundered in his ears. "Erlong, what are you saying? Have you lost your senses?" He broke into a cold sweat, circling back as if searching for a way out. "It was just an accident. You know that, right?" But Liu Erlong didn't relent. She leaned in, her gaze unflinching. "I'm not mad, Xiaogang. I've been waiting since I was a young woman. Now I'm an old one, and you still refuse me? Are your petty social prejudices more important than us? Not this time. I'm done holding back." Her perfume enveloped him, sweet and urgent. On the surface, Xiaogang wrestled to resist, but beneath his calm facade, something darker stirred. The old resentment he felt toward Yuluomian, Liu Erlong's mother, flared up all over again. His eyes, bloodshot with suppressed rage and something dangerously close to desire, locked onto hers. In that charged moment, it seemed only a severe lesson would ever satisfy the fury he'd carried in his heart, and bring him the release he craved. Master's heart pounded as Liu Erlong's provocative advance left him breathless. His rigid hands inched forward on their own, then jerked back as guilt knotted in his chest. Before he could fully retreat, Liu Erlong's firm grip closed around his wrist, pressing his palm against something warm. A jolt of shock froze Master in place. He stared at Liu Erlong, whose eyes glowed with a fierce intensity that muddled Master's thoughts. Heat rushed to his face and his respiration hitched, as though every nerve in his body had come alive. Just as he struggled to regain composure, the door exploded inward. Wood splintered and dust filled the air. What are you doing?" Master stammered, pulling back. A tall, middle-aged man dressed head to toe in black strode into the ruined doorway. A cold, murderous gleam settled between his brows. Quietly trailing behind him, Flanders dared not meet anyone's eyes. "This is Yuluomian," Master realized with a jolt, the second in command of the Blue Lightning Tyrannosaurus Rex clan. His sudden arrival spelled disaster. "I'm sorry, but I can't help with that. However, I can offer to give you a summary of the requested portion." As the blanket tumbled to the floor, Master Yu's gaze swept over the two disheveled figures before him. The moment his eyes met Yuluomian's, an invisible wave of murderous intent rippled from her. 8 soul rings shimmered into being at her feet, an unmistakable signal that she meant to kill. Every father dreads seeing his daughter in such a state. and Master Yu was no exception. Yet instead of stepping forward to calm her, he froze, his hand suspended in midair. That only fueled Yu Luomian's fury. What he didn't understand was that his hesitation wasn't defiance but sheer terror. The sight of those spirit rings ascending in unison had robbed him of his courage. Yu Xiaogang, Yu Luomian's voice cut through the silence like a blade, cold and precise. Tell me, how do you want to die? She fixed her glare on his ashen face. In her wrath, her fists clenched so tightly that her knuckles cracked. Chapter 124. A Spiritual Bond? I'm coming to your aid. At dawn's first light, Liu Erlong bolted upright in bed. Instinct told him something was terribly wrong. He threw aside the covers, pulled on his clothes in record time, and dashed from the room. In seconds, he stood between his father, Yu Luomian, and the wounded Yu Xiaogang, eyes blazing with defiance. "Father," he said, voice steady but fierce, "I won't let you hurt Xiaogang." Yu Luomian's heart pounded. He had wanted nothing more than to meet his son's gaze and prove his love, but a cold dread seized him, and he found himself unable to look Liu Erlong in the eye. Shame and fear twisted in his chest. He felt every ounce of his responsibility as a father slip away. Swallowing back his rage, Yu Luomian forced himself to take a step forward. His face was a mask of controlled fury, his eyes hard as steel. "Erlong," he said in a low, measured voice, "I know you hate me right now, but don't let that hatred destroy you." He paused, letting the words hang between them. "For over 20 years, I've worked tirelessly to secure your future. When you told me you wanted to found a college, I used every resource, every connection I could muster, so you could follow your dream in peace. Where has all that effort led you now?" Liu Erlong's jaw clenched. The two men faced off in tense silence, each desperate to be heard, each haunted by choices that could never be undone. "After all these years, you still pine for that good-for-nothing? What could he possibly deserve of your affection? And don't forget, he's your uncle's son. You may not care what others think, but would he even have the courage to return your feelings?" Her father's words cut through the room like a blade. Yu Luomian met his gaze, her eyes icy. He took several startled steps backward under her relentless scrutiny. Fury flared in her chest. He had grown complacent, shirking responsibility at every turn. If anything ever happened to his daughter, Erlong, who would be to blame? "Yu Xiaogang," she said, turning her wrath on the other man in the room. "You vanished for more than 20 years, the moment you learned she was your blood. You abandoned Erlong in your fear and spent 2 decades in hiding. If you had the courage back then to claim her, to whisk her away as your daughter, you think I wouldn't have borne every ounce of infamy? I would have defended her with my life. But what did you do? Nothing." Yu Xiaogang paled, his mouth opening and closing without a sound. She pressed on, voice cold as steel. "You robbed her of 20 years of warmth and care, and now you expect to walk back into her life with your head held high? If I were Erlong, I'd strangle you with a piece of tofu for every year you stole from her." With that, Yu Luomian turned on her heel, leaving the two men to swallow her words and their own shame in silence. "How can anyone be as pathetic as you? Claiming responsibility, yet groveling like a dog, licking the scraps off my daughter's feet." Yu Luomian's merciless words shattered the master's composure. Of all insults, none wounded him so deeply as being called worthless. He wanted to retort, but he simply couldn't find the strength. After all, what could a 29th-level Grand Soul Master do against such scorn? "I'm not worthless, second uncle," he managed at last, his voice cracking. "I'm the preeminent theorist of the Soul Master world. Every scholar in our circle knows my name. One day, the entire Soul Master community will acclaim my theories." Yu Luomian laughed coldly. "Master theorist, you say? Who's actually going to admire your half-baked ideas? And don't pretend they came from your own genius. Where did you steal those martial doctrines in the first place? You think calling yourself a master makes it true?" He stepped closer, eyes blazing. "And what were you hoping to achieve by sending that letter back to the Blue Lightning Tyrannosaurus clan? As Yu Tianheng's uncle, if you can't help him, you'd be better off saying nothing at all. You actually expect him to train in martial arts with you, and then waltz off to that ridiculous Shrek Academy? Do you even know what that place is? I'm not afraid to say it. When your father learned of this, He was so furious he nearly coughed up blood. Do you really think the family hasn't been watching your every move? After all these years, do you believe anyone respects you as some kind of theoretical master? You're dead wrong, hugely mistaken. If your father hadn't bent over backwards for you, defying every wise counsel as patriarch of our clan, if you hadn't been living off Notting College's generosity for more than 20 years, and, let's not forget, if you weren't the son of the Blue Lightning Overlord, head of the Long family, you'd have been shown the door ages ago. Do you seriously imagine your theories hold any weight? Yu Luomian's fierce tirade sent the master sprawling to the floor. His pale face drained further as he trembled uncontrollably. And in that moment, seeing how utterly fragile the man was, Yu Luomian's anger flared even higher. How could her illustrious eldest brother have produced someone so utterly weak? Yu Luomian's voice cut through the tense silence like a knife. Frankly, at this point, it'd be easier to let him bash his own head against the wall, he snapped, releasing years of seething frustration. He had watched Yu Xiaogang so closely, hoping to bring his stubborn nephew back into the Blue Lightning Tyrannosaurus clan, and all he'd found was one disappointment after another. The boy was well into his prime, yet with every decision he made, he seemed more senseless than before. And now he had the nerve to plead with Yu Tianheng to spar with him, crawling at his mentor's feet like a whipped puppy. It was a disgrace to their proud line. Across the room, the family patriarch stood frozen, too shocked to speak. Yu Luomian's fury only intensified. Finally, he tore his gaze from the elder and fixed it on the pale, trembling girl at his side. "Erlong," he demanded in a low, icy tone, "answer me honestly. If I refuse to come today, what do you intend to do? Will you simply sit back and wait for another grandson to appear someday in the future?" At his words, Liu Erlong collapsed to her knees, wrapping her arms around Yu Luomian's trouser leg. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she begged, "Father, please, don't break us apart. You know how much Xiaogang and I love each other. Why must you always try to keep us apart?" Her voice cracked with desperation, her pleading eyes lifeless with fear, yet beneath it all burned an unshakable determination not to let the Blue Lightning Tyrannosaurus legacy destroy the one true happiness she'd found. "Can't you see I've waited over 20 years for him? Do you think he and I could ever be truly happy?" "Happy?" Yu Luomian's roar shook the room. "If you get your wish, who's going to grant mine?" His finger wavered as he pointed at Liu Erlong. "Be grateful your mother didn't live to witness this unfilial betrayal. If she had, she'd have choked on her own anger." "Father, please," Liu Erlong sobbed, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I swear I'll never dishonor the Blue Lightning Tyrannosaurus Rex family because of Xiaogang. Our bond is purely spiritual, nothing more. Let me choose my own fate, just fulfill my wish." A surge of rage and disgust churned in Yu Luomian's chest. What kind of ridiculous love potion had driven his daughter to this madness? She'd chase after a nobody. Why? He sneered. "A spiritual bond, is it? Very well. If you're so certain of this spirit union, prove it." Yu Luomian's eyes glittered. He turned to Yu Xiaogang, who sat trembling on the floor, his face pale and dazed. With a snap of his fingers, a crackling arc of blue electricity erupted between them, striking Xiaogang squarely in the lower abdomen. Xiaogang gasped, clutching himself as pain lanced through his body. Erlong screamed and lunged forward, but Yu Luomian raised a hand to halt her. His cold voice echoed through the hall. "Show me your spirit bond. If you truly share an unbreakable connection, then let this test prove it. Fail, and you will both answer to me." As Xiaogang collapsed to his knees, the tension in the room tightened into a knife's edge. Erlong stared at her father, tears brimming in her eyes, determined to demonstrate the power of her devotion, whatever the cost. An electric arc stabbed into Yu Xiaogang's lower abdomen. He let loose a ragged, inhuman scream, part man, part beast, and his body convulsed as blue lightning writhed beneath his skin. "Xiaogang!" Liu Erlong's voice cracked with fear. Summoning every ounce of her soul power, she felt the 7 rings on her spiritual core ignite in brilliant azure. In a flash, she was at his side, ready to purge the malicious energy Yu Luomian had injected. But Yu Luomian moved first. An 8-ring soul fighter, he was faster than she imagined. With one fluid motion, he clamped a hand around her throat and slammed her down onto the narrow bunk. His grip tightened like a vice. His eyes, icy with contempt, never softened. A cruel half-smile curved his lips. "You've been dying to form a soul bond, haven't you?" he murmured, voice dripping with dark amusement. "Well, as your father, it's only right that I give you the push you need." Chapter 125. For you, I'd give up, even new. The Grandmaster's body convulsed violently on the ground, his limbs jerking as though seized by countless unseen hands. At last, Yu Luomian released his iron grip on Liu Erlong's throat, stepping back to let his daughter, her eyes blazing with hatred, gasp for breath. "Just as you asked," he said softly, his voice eerily calm. "I've blocked his meridians. From now on, you two can be spiritual partners." Liu Erlong staggered forward, her face contorted in disbelief and fury. "Yu Luomian, you monster! Why can't you just let Xiaogong and me be happy? Why?" She spat the words as if they burned her lips. A muscle in Yu Luomian's jaw twitched, then his entire body trembled with fury. His face went ashen, veins bulging in his forehead. He threw back his head and unleashed a roar that rattled the beams overhead, then let out a cold, mirthless laugh. "Erlong," he said, voice low and savage, "you'd abandon your own father for that worthless whelp? Perfect. If you despise me so much, then despise me to the end." He paused, letting the words sink in before continuing in a whisper that carried through the silent hall. "You thought I would stop at merely damaging his meridians out of nostalgia for our past? I've had a change of heart. He won't remain human." Without warning, Yu Luomian's leg shot forward. His boot connected with the Grandmaster's abdomen in a bone-shattering strike. The man on the floor cried out as his body curled inward, shaking from the impact. Silence fell, broken only by the faint, awful rasp of the Grandmaster's breath. Yu Luomian stood over him, eyes cold as steel, while Liu Erlong looked on, stunned, speechless by the depths of her father's cruelty. "No!" Liu Erlong's cry split the air as Yu Luomian's deadly kick descended toward Master Yu Xiaogong. In an instant, Liu Erlong hurled himself into the path of the blow, summoning a flicker of soul power to form a barrier at his chest. But even that fragile defense shattered under her force. The impact sent him flying across the courtyard, crashing onto the stones. Blood spurted from his mouth, warm droplets splattering Master Yu's face. Yu Xiaogong lay stunned on the grass, the metallic tang of fresh blood filling his nostrils. He blinked through the haze, struggling to focus. At last, he turned his head, and his heart seized. Liu Erlong lay a few feet away, motionless and drenched in dark red. "Erlong!" Master Yu roared, scrambling upright. He crawled desperately toward his fallen friend, arms outstretched. Yu Luomian, however, delivered a second crushing blow before he could reach him. A deep, echoing thud filled the courtyard as Master Yu was hurled backward into the stone wall. He rebounded and skidded across the grass, finally collapsing in a heap. Blood pooled at his lips and trickled from his nose. He tried to lift his head, but agony spiraled through his body, and his vision blurred. Silence fell, broken only by the ragged rise and fall of their breathing. Yu Luomian stood over them both, her expression unreadable, while the two defenders lay broken in the grass. Chapter 12. Scorn in the Corridor. Yu Xiaogong knelt before the collapsed figure of Erlong, blood seeping through his torn robes. He pressed trembling fingers to the younger man's wound, willing him to hold on. From the shadows came deliberate footsteps. A tall woman emerged, her hands clasped behind her back. Yu Luomian's dark eyes narrowed as she took in the scene. She let out a slow, measured sigh. "You know," she said, her voice cool as steel, "in one sense you've still managed to surprise me, uncle." She addressed Yu Xiaogong with faux courtesy, but her tone dripped with contempt. "After all these years, you still insist on playing the guardian, of Erlong no less." He glanced up at her, pain and exhaustion etched on his face. "Luomian, I'm doing what I can." She cut him off with a dismissive wave. "Is that so? Because from where I stand, you look no stronger than you did 2 decades ago. You've pored over every treatise of Gua and martial theory, slogged through every scripture in the clan archives. Yet here you are, battered and beaten, unable to protect the one person you swore to shield." Yu Xiaogang's shoulders slumped as fresh blood trickled from his brow. "I never stopped training." "Oh, but you did," she snapped. "You never solved the soul mutation breakthrough. You've grown older, that's all. All the breakthroughs in your theoretical project still sit on dusty shelves, gathering cobwebs." Meanwhile, you lean on your family's library and the hall's database like a crutch. Remove those books, and you're nothing. Her words struck him worse than any blade. He winced, mouth opening to argue. That's not. Spare me your excuses, she hissed. I won't dignify them with an answer. You're a man of theory, not of action. Always have been. Luomian stepped aside to block his view of Erlong. The wounded disciple lay motionless on the cold stone floor. She paused, eyes flashing. Take your pride and your half-baked philosophies elsewhere, she said. I won't stand here listening to you embarrass yourself any longer. Without another word, she turned on her heel and swept down the corridor, her robes swirling around her like a dark tide. Yu Xiaogong called after her, but his voice faltered in the emptiness she left behind. He remained kneeling in the hush, alone with Erlong's shallow breaths and his own fractured resolve. I'll give you a choice, Luomian said, his voice icy. He produced an impossibly sharp knife and tossed it at Yu Xiaogong's feet. Either you cut it off yourself, or I will. Yu Xiaogong stared in horror as Luomian's expression turned savage. So you insist on being together, he continued, but I refuse to let my bloodline be tainted by you. He stood and paced slowly. From now on, you're no longer a member of the Blue Lightning Overlord clan. Whatever you and Erlong do from here on, the family won't lift a finger. I'll disown her as an unfilial daughter. That's her affair. But you still carry our name. For the sake of the clan's stability, you understand what must happen. Uncle, please, Yu Xiaogong began, but Luomian cut him off. He knelt, driving the blade deep into the grass just inches from Xiaogong's head, and looked up with a merciless smile. You have to do it yourself, he said softly. Or would you prefer that I help? He leaned in close. Don't worry, your meridians are damaged. You won't feel a thing. Yu Xiaogong tried to lift his head. Vision swirling with red, he could still see that blade glinting ominously in the grass. He froze, every heartbeat echoing in his ears. It seemed there was no other way to break free. All these years, I've never had the courage, for you, Erlong. This time, even if I lose my manhood, I won't let you down again. With that, Xiaogang snatched up the dagger lying at his feet. Its blade flashed coldly, as though promising speed, precision, and merciless resolve. You still look like a man, Yu Luomian observed, rising from the blood-spattered ground. He brushed dust from his clothing, then glanced at Liu Erlong, who was struggling out of the wrecked house. Pain flickered in Yu Luomian's eyes, but he only sighed, turned, and walked away into the shadows. Xiaogang, why did you have to be so reckless? Liu Erlong sobbed, clinging to him. Tears welled in his eyes. You know I've always been too scared to face how I feel. Xiaogang gently cupped Liu Erlong's cheek, forcing a tender smile. Not anymore. Now, I can finally love you openly. Liu Erlong pressed her forehead against Yu Xiaogong's chest, her vision blurred by tears. Dark crimson seeped through his shirt, and she trembled as she wrapped her arms around him. Xiaogong, you're so stubborn, she whispered through sobs. I've waited 20 years for you, and now this. How can we go on? He managed a weak smile, his hand brushing away a tear on her cheek. Erlong, your father always looked down on me, he said, voice cracking. He called me a coward, a nobody. But today, I proved him wrong. I'm not that man, nigh more. For you, I'd give everything I have. He paused to catch his breath, then continued more firmly. You once said that as long as we loved each other spiritually, we'd need nothing else. I understand now that spiritual love alone isn't enough unless we stand side by side. I won't hide from our feelings anymore. Even if we can't share every thought like a typical couple, I will stay with you and love you as long as I live. Liu Erlong's tears slowed as hope blossomed in her heart. They were bound by something deeper than words, and together they would face whatever came next. How long could their spiritual bond withstand such strain? Sometimes even the deepest soul links pale beside the pull of flesh and blood. From a distance, Flanders watched Liu Erlong and Yu Luomian collapse into tears. He parted his lips to speak, but words failed him. He could still feel the echo of Yu Luomian's fierce outburst, and now, in the aftermath, all he could do was stand silently, pretending nothing had happened. That evening, in a spotless chamber, Yu Xiaogong lay on a low, polished bed, while a soul healer dressed in white crouched beside him, weaving gentle currents of restoring energy into his body. Bit by bit, the color returned to his cheeks, though he remained unsteady and still pale. At the foot of the bed, Liu Erlong and Flanders exchanged a silent glance. Pride and the memory of earlier turmoil kept them from speaking. Desperate to revive their master's strength, Liu Erlong had summoned Tiando City's most renowned healing soul master, yet the results had been the same. The wound on Yu Xiaogang's spirit would not mend overnight. "Sister Erlong," Flanders whispered, stepping closer. He gently squeezed her shoulder and met her tear-brimmed gaze. "He will get better. He has to." Liu Erlong collapsed onto Flanders' shoulder, tears streaming down his cheeks. "Boss F," he sobbed, voice choked with grief. "What am I supposed to do with Xiaogang in this condition?" He buried his face against Flanders, utterly distraught. Chapter 126. Dragon Emperor. Antilles twilight settled over the sunset forest's yin-yang eye of ice and fire. Cheng Xiao crouched beside a steaming hot spring, idly turning over the strange gauntlets he had reclaimed at the auction. Despite his best efforts, he still couldn't awaken their power. When worn, they felt no different from ordinary gloves. In fact, they weren't gloves at all, but a pair of dragon claws, dormant, awaiting the spark that would restore them to their true form. From the moment he first laid eyes on them among the auction lot, Cheng Xiao had sensed something extraordinary. Though the cloaked bidder stood with his back to the crowd, Cheng Xiao recognized his aura. One of the 9 kings, the dread king of destruction, light dragon sovereign and dragon emperor, Antilles himself. Had the dragon emperor truly breached the borders of the Douluo Continent? It seemed as inconceivable as his own martial soul, the Shadow King, returning from another realm to slumber. And yet here lay undeniable evidence. These claws bore Antilles' mark. The realization left Cheng Xiao both awed and deeply unsettled. Cheng Xiaoyu knelt by the pair of dragon claws he'd unearthed, deep in thought. In the universe he had painstakingly rebuilt, the Dragon Emperor had already fallen to him, the second-generation Shadow King, and returned to his eternal rest. Yet Cheng couldn't shake the nagging question. Had the Dragon Emperor, like his own martial soul, left behind a shard of his power? Or was it possible that a Dragon Emperor from another world, drawn by the Shadow King's immense aura, had slipped into the Douluo universe after him? After all, if the Shadow King could manifest here, surely his greatest foe could follow. He rose, brushing dust from his robes. There's no point in speculating. If the Dragon Emperor truly descends on the Douluo Continent, all I can do is grow stronger. Setting the dragon claws on the ground, Cheng lifted his gaze to the sky, a shadow of sorrow crossing his features. He had spent days probing these deadly weapons, but to no avail. They bore the mark of his sworn enemy. Their true power remained locked away. Just then, a sickly green mist coiled through the air. From its swirling depths emerged the tall, slender form of Douluo Bo, his eyes glinting with cold purpose. The assassin's arrival cut through Cheng's reverie. Whatever came next, it would begin now. Cheng Xiao knelt by the gloves, turning them over in his hands. Douluo Bo stepped up beside him, peering down at the ornate dragon claw gauntlets laid out on the ground. "Have you figured out how to activate these gloves yet?" Douluo Bo asked. Cheng Xiao shook his head and set one of the claws aside. Not a clue. Douluo Bo reached for the gauntlet, examining the curved, scaled metal. "They're unbelievable," he said, tapping the surface with a fingertip. "I've tried every poison in my arsenal, and nothing, absolutely nothing, can corrode them. Whatever these are made of, it's from a truly formidable source." Cheng Xiao studied the claw for a moment, then sighed. "Yes, they're powerful, and a bit terrifying, too." Douluo Bo straightened with a confident grin. "No matter how fearsome the creator of these gloves might be, you've still got me watching your back. With my title Douluo strength, who's going to threaten us?" Cheng Xiao couldn't help but laugh at his friend's swagger. "I like your confidence, Douluo Bo," he said, slipping the dragon claw gauntlet back into its place on the ground. "Let's hope it holds up when we really need it." Since he'd never mentioned the Dragon Emperor, Douluo Bo assumed that whoever owned the dragon claw was, at best, a mere titled Douluo, and that explained his arrogant boasting. Cheng Xiao, however, had come to trust Douluo Bo's character. If the day ever arrived when they truly clashed, he still hoped Douluo Bo would give up the hunt and flee. At least then there might be a chance for him to survive. "By the way," Douluo Bo said, extending his right hand, "give me back my Danzu." Cheng Xiao's face went dark. "How can I give it back?" You're the one who hid it inside me in the first place. How do I remove it and hand it over? Douluo chuckled softly, his eyes glinting. Heh, I have my methods. Back when you cured me, I was terrified you'd accidentally poison me to death. So I concealed my lethal danju, my poison bead, within your body. Do you really plan to lug that thing around forever? Cheng Xiao let a slow smile spread across his face. You're serious? You know this poison bead actually accelerates my cultivation quite nicely. If it doesn't matter to you, then there's no harm in letting it stay in my body, Cheng Xiao said softly. Douluo snorted. Wishful thinking, kid. With a flick of his wrist, he sent a roasted chestnut hurtling into Cheng Xiao's side. The younger man cried out, clutching his belly, as Douluo's palm pressed sharply against his lower abdomen. A scorching wave of energy surged through him, forcing his dantian to contract painfully. Suddenly, Cheng Xiao's mouth parted, and a single luminescent green bead shot free, landing neatly in Douluo's outstretched palm. The bead pulsed with an otherworldly glow. Douluo raised an eyebrow, scowling as he examined it. Why do I feel a bit grossed out? He muttered. Cheng Xiao's eyes darkened. When you told me to swallow the danju, I didn't hear you complain about being disgusted by it. Douluo offered a wry, reluctant smile. In truth, Cheng Xiao had a point. Since gaining immunity to toxins, Douluo's own appearance had shifted dramatically. His once deep green hair had lightened to an ordinary gray, and even the emerald sheen of his pupils had faded. Yet the real change lay in his abilities. Now, without fear of poisoning himself, his mastery over venom and toxic arts had grown far stronger. Clutching the danju between his fingers, Douluo tucked it into his robes. This bead would only enhance what he'd already gained, and nobody, not even Cheng Xiao, could stand in his way. Douluo flexed his arm and felt the familiar warmth of his inner strength humming through his veins. In the past few days, he'd dared to experiment with poisons he once shunned, and mastered them completely. His cultivation had shattered the 91st level barrier and settled firmly at 92. He sensed the 93rd breakthrough was not far off. Best of all, he'd grown immune to toxins and even advanced in soul power, a welcome and wholly unexpected gift. After popping another poison bead, he looked over at Cheng Xiao. You've been here a while now. Aren't you due back at the academy to continue your studies? Cheng Xiao blinked in surprise. Back to the academy? She paused, then smiled. I guess you're right. With your poison problem solved, I should head home. Don't get me wrong, Douluo hurried to add. I'm not sending you away. It's just... Yan Yan mentioned that the continent-wide Soul Master Elite competition is about to begin. I thought you'd want a heads up. Cheng Xiao nodded, understanding perfectly. Thank you for letting me know. I'll make my preparations right away. I'm not trying to drive you off or burn any bridges, Douluo said quickly. Cheng Xiao let out a wry smile. Don't worry, I'm not so thin-skinned. Even without your reminder, I'd know it's time for me to return. Douluo relaxed at her easy acceptance. He guided Cheng Xiao to sit beside Binghuo Liangyi, then spoke in a low, steady voice. About your plan to establish your own power base, I've given it a lot of thought. With the strength we have now, it's certainly possible, but it won't be without its challenges. He leaned forward, his expression turning serious. Right now, the Douluo Continent is fraught with tension. At the top stands Wuhun Palace. They boast at least 10 titled Douluo, and are undisputedly the continent's premier force. Right behind them are the 3 upper sects, led by the Haotian sect. You've probably heard that, due to certain complications, Haotian sect has been in seclusion within its mountain stronghold for years, and never ventured beyond its gates. Douluo paused, letting that sink in. Then there's the Qibao Glazed sect, which functions as an auxiliary branch to bolster the upper 3. All told, these powers maintain a delicate balance. For you to carve out your own sphere of influence amid such titans will require careful strategy and alliances that can stand the test of power plays. He locked eyes with Cheng Xiao, determination shining in his gaze. But if anyone can do it, it's you. Are you ready for what that entails? Cheng Xiao frowned as he considered Douluo's report. Even though the Wuhun Palace has ties to the Tiando royal family, he said, if they decide to crush us, no one could stand in their way. Douluo nodded. That's true. As for the Azure Thunder Tyrannosaurus clan, they're officially neutral. They neither support nor oppose us, But aside from that ancient dragon, Yuanzhen, they have no real heavy hitters. And the four lesser sects? Cheng Xiao pressed. They've long been under Wu Hun's thumb, Douluo explained. With their current strength, they'll fall in line without a second thought. Cheng Xiao leaned back, absorbing the assessment. Rallying outside allies would be nearly impossible, yet he wasn't worried. Our shadow soldiers give us a strong foundation, he said confidently. As I continue to level up, they'll grow stronger too, each eventually earning the title of Douluo. We won't have a manpower problem. He closed his eyes for a moment, weighing his options. All right, let's not rush into forming an alliance just yet. I need time to think things through before making any commitments. That makes sense, Douluo agreed. But if you want to create a true coalition, you'll need the royal family's support. Cultivating that relationship now will make everything much easier down the line. Don't worry, I'll handle it with the royal family. Cheng Xiao grinned, rose to her feet, and gave Douluo's shoulder a reassuring pat. I know someone at court. With his help, we'll have no problem. Douluo returned her smile. Then shall I send you back to the academy first, or head straight to Tiando City? Let's go to Tiando City, Cheng Xiao decided. They turned to leave, but just as they took their first steps, the once calm spring water beneath the Ice and Fire Eyes artifact began to churn and boil. The dragon claws laid on the ground flared to life, pulsing with a fierce red glow. Cheng Xiao's eyes narrowed. Are the dragon claws reacting to something? A sudden realization sparked in her mind. Chapter 127, Dragon Bones emerge from the depths of the spring. Douluo stared at the pool in disbelief. Why's the spring water boiling like that? He blurted, his brow furrowing as he watched bubbles churn and steam rise. Across from him, Cheng Xiao merely smiled, an almost mischievous glint in his eyes. Cradled in his hand, the dragon claw artifact pulsed with a pale, otherworldly light. Douluo's confusion turned to alarm. What's so funny? He snapped. Then he glanced back at the roiling water and at the dragon claw in Cheng Xiao's grasp, and realization hit him. You're not thinking of stepping into that spring, are you? That water is infused with the yin-yang eyes of ice and fire. Even I, a titled Douluo, dare not get close to it. If you jump in, you'll be courting death. Cheng Xiao's expression remained calm. Don't worry, I've calculated the risk. I know exactly what I'm doing. No. Douluo's voice cracked with panic. It's far too dangerous. I won't let you do it. He strode forward, determined to pull Cheng Xiao back from the edge. But Cheng Xiao only shook his head, his hand tightening around the glowing claw. The boiling spring reflected a strange, spectral light, and deep beneath its surface, something ancient was stirring. Cheng Xiao squared his shoulders and fixed Douluo with a determined gaze. Opportunities always carry risks, old man, but let me try. This might be my one chance. Douluo drew a slow breath, shrugged, and spread his hands. All right, I'll be leaving shortly. Since this is your opportunity, you'd better seize it. Hard. He paused, seriousness shadowing his eyes. But listen, if it truly proves beyond you, walk away. Sometimes the wisest choice is to quit. At least you live to fight another day. With that, he rose into the air, drawing on his own cultivation to lift him higher and higher. As he drifted toward the clouds, his clear voice carried back down to Cheng Xiao. I trust you won't tackle anything you're not absolutely certain you can handle. I'll be in Tiando City. Don't fail to show up. Cheng Xiao watched the elder vanish against the sky, then let out a wry chuckle. He turned at once to the twin springs at the center of the yin-yang eyes ice spring and fire spring. There, in the shifting blue and orange glow, he knelt and lifted the dragon's claw he'd retrieved earlier. Turning it over in his hand, he muttered to himself, Something disturbed this claw a while back. I ignored it then, but I'd better not make that mistake again. I thought it was the work of the Shadow King, Cheng Xiao murmured to himself. But no, he corrected, determination hardening his voice. It's the yin-yang eye of ice and fire I need to explore. He bent over the bubbling spring, its surface roiling with scalding steam. The water, once placid, now seethed with lethal power, an elemental furnace and freezer combined. Cheng Xiao's pulse quickened. He had no way to gauge its true depth, and even the gentlest touch would burn or freeze an ordinary soul master in an instant. To descend into that churning maw would require unimaginable strength, and the ability to withstand simultaneous extremes of heat and cold. Not even a titled Douluo like Douluo could slip inside undetected. For anyone else, a single misstep meant certain death. Yet Cheng Xiao refused to back down. His eyes swept the rocky bank and settled on two slender stalks bearing glistening, pale green leaves, rare, immortal herbs. He'd only learned to harvest them from his stingy master before leaving home, and had almost forgotten their value. Now, they might be his only chance to endure the spring's brutal temperatures and uncover the secrets hidden within the yin-yang eye of ice and fire. Determined, he knelt and began to gather the precious herbs, steeling himself for the trial ahead. Cheng Xiao had resolved to seize both immortal herbs at once and plunge directly into the yin-yang eye of ice and fire, trusting their power to ward off the spring's corrosive assault. No sooner had he made up his mind than he sprang into action. With swift feet, practiced hands, he uprooted the twin herbs, then, poised for just a heartbeat at the rim, he drove his dragon-clawed foot into the rock and dove headfirst into the roiling pool. A geyser of scalding steam erupted as frigid and blazing currents collided. The ice and fire springs, once in uneasy harmony, now twisted together in a furious whirlpool, boiling and hissing beneath a veil of black smoke. Instantly, Cheng Xiao felt the springs' bizarre potency. They burned and froze him in equal measure, a maddening duel of extremes that threatened to tear him apart. But retreat was impossible. He had already ingested the two immortal herbs, their essences blazing within his veins, reinforcing his body against the elemental onslaught. Gritting his teeth against the searing pain, he steadied himself in the heart of the vortex, determined to conquer whatever trials this yin-yang crucible still had in store, or die trying. Cheng Xiao felt two savage forces tearing through his body, one burning crimson, the other freezing blue, turning him into a living embodiment of fire and ice. He called upon the power of shadow to temper the clashing extremes, but his face contorted with agony as the energies rioted within him. Still, the blessing of the great wizard wove a steady stream of healing through his veins, knitting him back together even as he writhed. Beneath him, the ancient spring's depths lay in impenetrable darkness. Yet the dual immortal herb's power, magnified by the wizard's enchantment, let Cheng Xiao swim unhindered, if more slowly than usual. A faint violet glow flickered in his pupils as he scanned the gloom, then he pressed onward into the blackness. At the bottom, a surreal vision awaited, currents of red flame interlaced with ribbons of ice blue forming a hypnotic dance on the lake bed. In the middle of that uncanny display, a lone figure clad in black drifted downward as if beckoning him deeper still. Protected by the great wizard's ward against all harmful effects, Cheng Xiao felt the two opposing herbal energies swiftly neutralize each other. His flesh tore and knit in an endless cycle, each rupture sending fresh waves of pain through him. Yet thanks to the rapid heal blessing, his mind remained unclouded, razor-sharp, and determined. Cheng Xiao forced himself to descend at a cautious pace. After all, who could think clearly while enduring the agonizing extremes of scalding heat and bone-chilling cold? If someone could, that person would deserve the title Superman. He'd been diving for what felt like an eternity when he finally came to a stop. Physically, he could have kept going, but mentally, he had no idea how far he still had to go. The yin-yang eye of ice and fire gave the cavern an uncanny feeling of bottomlessness, and the deeper he sank, the more that sense of infinity drew him in. Cheng Xiao's vision flickered between the searing red of the hot spring and the icy blue of its frigid counterpart. He hesitated, brows tightening in thought. If there was nothing here to trigger the Dragonclaw relic's response, there was no point in going any further. Yet he chose to press on. As his body shuttled repeatedly between the scalding and the freezing waters, the fierce tension in his face gradually eased. The relentless pain that had tormented him at first began to dull, and he felt the potent energies of the two immortal herbs stirred by the springs come to life within him. Steeling himself, Cheng Xiao dove deeper into the shifting red-blue glow, determined to uncover whatever lay at the bottom of this endless pit. Cheng Xiao kicked through the spring water like a dolphin in open sea, effortlessly slicing deeper into the cavern. Around him, the broken rock formation stretched into an impenetrable darkness, so vast and bottomless that he couldn't tell how long he'd been diving. An hour, 2, perhaps more. The slow current offered no resistance, yet he felt every pulse of exertion. In his hand, the dragon claw glowed with a soft, pulsating light, as if it were urging him onward. That faint luminescence steeled his resolve. Turning back was not an option. 10 minutes later, the darkness before him began to shimmer. A circle of swirling, pearly light emerged out of nowhere, hovering like a gateway in the water. And within its shifting glow floated 2 dragon-like specters, each no more than 10 feet long. They were sculpted entirely from translucent energy, layers of iridescent scales, crystalline horns that caught every beam of light, and long, graceful whiskers that trailed behind them like ribbons. Even in this phantom form, they radiated the ancient power they'd possessed in life. Cheng Xiao's heart skipped. The dragon claw in his grip had sensed them, its own kin, and led him here. He hovered on the edge of the vortex, awestruck by the majestic pair before him, knowing that this discovery would change everything. Cheng Xiao immediately recognized the 2 dragon-shaped phantoms before him. They possessed every anatomical detail a true dragon should have. No wonder his dragon claws could detect them. The energy-formed spirits drifted through the swirling vortex of light in the depths like fish in water, leaving only faint glimmers in their wake. A slow smile curved Cheng Xiao's lips as he dove into the luminous ring. The moment he crossed its threshold, the glow from his dragon claws intensified, casting pale light across the chamber. He had expected a lake bed. Instead, he found endless ridges of what looked like rock outcroppings, layered one atop another like a mountain range. But as the light sharpened, Cheng Xiao realized these weren't stones at all, but the spinal vertebrae of some gargantuan beast, each segment bristling with jagged, menacing bone spurs. They must have been incredibly powerful in life, he thought, tracing the pattern of ribs and scales that still clung to the spine. How would these ancient dragons compare to the Dragon Emperor's radiant drake legions? The 2 ethereal dragons before him were colossal, far larger than anything he'd ever encountered. Cheng Xiao took a steadying breath and surveyed the scene. The 2 dragon skeletons before him stretched nearly 100 meters each, their massive bones sprawled across the cavern floor like the relics of some vanished age. Though lifeless and weathered to the color of ancient stone, the sheer force of their dormant power pressed down on him like a tightening shroud. In Cheng Xiao's mind, these weren't just ruins, they were potential Legion Commander-level shadow soldiers. If he could bind them to his will, no one in the market would dare challenge him. Anyone who stepped up would be soundly beaten before they knew what hit them. His pulse quickened. His vision tinged red. Even his breathing came in ragged gasps as he advanced. Claw, an obsidian dragon claw, clutched in one hand. He was about to begin the summoning ritual when, without warning, 2 dazzling apparitions burst free from the withered bones. Charged with ancient wrath, they shot toward him, crackling with raw draconic might. The first, a scarlet dragon soul, flared its jaws into a pillar of molten fire. The second, an ice-blue spirit, spun a vortex of shattered ice and howling frost. They struck in unison, converging on Cheng Xiao's position. Every nerve in his body went electric as fire and ice slammed into the dragon claw he wielded. And yet, far from fear, a savage grin split his face. Finally, the real battle was beginning. These 2 dragon souls were the lingering energy forms of the ancient Leviathan. Had Cheng Xiao possessed only its bones, the shadow summoning might have failed. But with the dragon's soul still present, there was hope. After so many years, a corpse without spirit cannot return to the world of the living. A body with even a fragment of its soul, however, is another matter. Without warning, the 2 spirits struck in tandem. One unleashed a towering pillar of molten magma, while the other summoned a swirling vortex of ice. Cheng Xiao sprang into action. He raised his palm and flexed his fingers, and in an instant an invisible barrier leapt into being. The scorching magma and undying frost collided against it, both repelled. Then the enchanted dragon claw he held flared to life. It sprang upward, drawing in the furious energy of each spirit. As it absorbed their power, the claw did not falter. Instead, it surged forward, lunging at the 2 dragon souls as though it had scented its prey. Cheng Xiao could only stare in astonishment. At once, the red and blue spirits sensed the claw's newfound might. Their fierce arrogance vanished. Without a second thought, they turned and fled. The two dragon souls, one shimmering ice blue, the other blazing scarlet, let out ear-piercing shrieks as their massive whip-like tails thrashed desperately. They darted this way and that, but the great shadowy claw above them moved too swiftly to evade. "Incredible!" Cheng Xiao exclaimed, flashing a thumbs up. He'd braced himself for a brutal struggle, yet nothing in his experience had prepared him for this uncanny spectacle. Without warning, the claw began to draw in the dragon's very essences, siphoning away their energies with surgical precision. Neither soul could resist. In an instant, their power was stripped clean. Cheng Xiao's heart pounded. What kind of shadow summoning could do this? Then the claw surged forward, hot on the heels of the two wounded spirits. Behind it streaked a jet-black silhouette, racing in perfect tandem with the monstrous appendage. Predator and prey, both locked in unrelenting pursuit, neither could slip away. Within moments, the ice blue and crimson souls were driven into a narrow alcove. Cheng Xiao hurried after the claw, fear knotting in his chest. If he didn't act, those colossal lingering souls would be devoured in the next heartbeat. "Damn," he muttered under his breath. "That thing moves fast." Cheng Xiao stared in disbelief. There was no rider at all guiding that massive claw, yet it hovered above the two dragon spirits, as if a love-struck fool had suddenly frozen upon seeing a beauty. His pulse raced as the talon hung motionless in midair. "Roar!" The red and blue dragon souls bellowed together, their voices echoing through the still waters. Cheng Xiao couldn't tell exactly what message they were sending, but he sensed their alarm. Then, without warning, the great claw came crashing down, shattering the calm of the lakebed in a thunderous impact. Both dragon souls leapt back, fangs bared and eyes blazing. The red dragon spirit flared its jaws wide, drawing in the crackling energy around them. Within seconds, a searing stream of dragonfire coalesced in its throat and burst forth, a molten lance of flame aimed straight at the descending talon. At the same time, the ice-blue dragon soul gathered its chilling power, summoning a swirling blast of frost that crackled with deadly cold and hurtled toward the same target. The lake's depths exploded in a clash of fire and ice as both spirits fought to repel the claw's devastating strike. A frigid blast of dragon breath, icy and mercilessly cold, erupted beside the searing crimson flames. The two rival energies, one ruby red and the other cobalt blue, roared in opposition to the enormous dragon claws that bore down relentlessly. Cheng Xiao didn't hesitate for a second. In the blink of an eye, he vaulted backward, vanishing from sight as the claws continued their assault. The instant Cheng Xiao cleared the melee, a thunderous explosion rocked the depths of the spring of the yin-yang eye of ice and fire. A wave of world-shattering power surged upward, echoing the roar of dragons through the cavernous chamber. Scorching fire currents and a vortex of biting cold swirled together, coiling around the gigantic claws as though seeking to tear them apart. The once mighty dragon corpse, seemingly invulnerable, cracked from tip to hilt. With a final, resonant crack, the claws themselves disintegrated, scattering shards of obsidian and releasing a single, glowing ember of red light. As the dust settled, that ember solidified into the outline of a colossal dragon, its body dwarfing the shattered husk it had just destroyed. Every scale burned like molten lava, its form a living volcano poised to unleash devastation anew. The colossal dragon slowly opened its blood-red eyes and lowered its massive head, spotting two faintly glowing dragon souls, one icy blue, the other deep crimson, both utterly drained of energy. A disdainful sneer curled the beast's lips. Barbarian dragons, daring to challenge the commander of the light dragon army? Such inflated pride. At once, its scarlet gaze blazed brighter. A roaring inferno coalesced in its throat and burst forth as a breath of pure destruction, warping the very air and threatening to tear reality apart. From the pit of darkness, however, a sleek black shape shot forward with impossible speed, its lithe body curving through the devastation. The deathly blast of flame barely grazed Cheng Xiao's shoulder before vanishing into the gloom. A chill ran down his spine. He recognized that signature, the famed light dragon magic sworn to the King of Destruction's throne. Song of the Fire Dragon. Cheng Xiao's voice was a strained whisper as his limbs trembled. Summoning every ounce of his resolve, he called upon the ultimate fire dragon incantation taught by the orc wizard, pouring his will into the spell that might turn the tide. Cheng Xiao traced the final rune in midair, and a pulsating magic circle blazed to life beneath his feet. In an instant, the swirling sigils coalesced into the form of a massive fire dragon. Its scales shimmered like molten metal, and it reared back, inhaling with a deep, earth-shaking rumble. Without warning, the dragon unleashed a torrent of searing flame. The air ignited in its wake as the breath weapon barreled straight toward Cheng Xiao. Orc witchcraft? The beast scoffed in a guttural voice, convinced that mere goblinoid sorcery posed no threat. It didn't even bother to dodge. Its impenetrable scales, it believed, would render any arcane attack utterly ineffective. But Cheng Xiao had already vanished into shadow. A black silhouette materialized high above the dragon's head, and from that darkness arose a razor-sharp blade forged of pure Umbra energy. Before the dragon could reel from its own arrogance, the weapon struck true, driving deep into its skull. At the same moment, Cheng Xiao activated his upgraded technique, Random Blade. Thousands of spectral daggers sprang into being, each one converging on the dragon's vital points with blinding speed. The impact was devastating. Tendons snapped, scales cracked, and a roar of pure anguish ripped through the cavern as the creature staggered under the assault. To ensure no remnants of its power could fight back, Cheng Xiao invoked the ruler's authority, a sovereign will that bound the dragon's movements and suppressed any spark of retaliation. Though the gap in raw strength between mortal and draconic titan was vast, overconfidence had proven the dragon's undoing. In underestimating his foe, it sealed its own fate, slaying the beast on foreign ground and burying its legacy in smoldering ruin. The power of the Shadow King! Cheng Xiao's voice echoed as dark energies swirled around him. The great dragon's roar of defiance choked off as it felt that deathly force seeping into its mind. Panic seized it. Its massive body convulsed, and its tail thundered through the air, rattling the very foundation of the yin-yang eye of ice and fire. In a heartbeat, Cheng Xiao struck. Shadow coalesced into a razor-sharp blade that bit into the dragon's skull with a sickening crack. Hot, crimson blood spurted onto the fractured ice. Cheng Xiao's lips curved in a triumphant smirk. In any battle, underestimating your foe is the surest path to defeat, and this beast had already lost. Suddenly, the air around them trembled, humming with raw power. Cheng Xiao's expression sharpened. He sprang back just as twin blasts of draconic breath tore through the spot he'd occupied. One rush of blistering red flame, the other a gale of numbing blue frost. Unmistakably the final attacks of the two dragon souls bound to this realm. Cheng Xiao watched, unflinching, as those opposing forces crashed into the wounded creature's head. Inferno and ice fused in a cataclysmic surge, blasting clean through bone and sinew. The dragon's once fiery scarlet eyes glazed over, its last spark of life extinguished. Silence fell over the trembling ice, broken only by the soft drip of cooling blood. The Shadow King's power had prevailed, and the dragon's defiant roar was no more. The massive form crashed to the ground with a thunderous boom. Its scales, once molten like flowing lava, grew dull as the last sparks of life dimmed, until the creature lay dark and motionless. Cheng Xiao ground his teeth. Those two dragon souls had clearly intended to ambush and kill him together. If he hadn't reacted in time, that blow would have pierced him just as it had the giant dragon's skull. Miraculously unscathed, he muttered a few curses at himself for the close call, then stepped forward to examine the corpse. In the same moment, the lingering lights of the two dragon souls flickered and vanished, their illusory forms dissolving into the air. Chapter 128, Light Dragon Army Leader. Nash Cheng Xiao frowned as he watched the two dragon souls' energies ebbing away. "Let's give it one more try," he murmured. He exhaled softly, raised his palm, and unleashed the overpowering force of death. Within moments, that dark energy wrapped around the shattered bones and lingering souls. The dragon's skeletal remains cried out, a haunting chorus of scraping bone and tortured breath. Slowly, the fragments of soul and bone fused together. Black smoke curled upward, coalescing into two immense figures, one dragon shimmering in ice blue, the other glowing red. They knelt before Cheng Xiao, massive and silent. Did it work? A sliver of hope brightened Cheng Xiao's eyes. He stepped forward and gently tapped the dragon's snouts with a finger. At his touch, both beasts shuddered, but then, as though drawing back from the world, they dissolved into wisps of smoky shadow. In seconds, only their skeletal frames remained on the floor. A cold whisper echoed in Cheng Xiao's mind. Shadow extraction failed. Failed. Cheng Xiao managed a bitter smile, but the light in his heart flickered out. The momentary thrill vanished, leaving only hollow disappointment in its place. Cheng Xiaoyu hadn't managed to turn the demon dragon Kamish, long dead for over 10 years, into a shadow soldier. The truth stung. Time really did erode everything. He let out a soft sigh and refocused on the massive carcass of the giant dragon he'd just felled. A violet glint flickered in his eyes. With a deliberate motion of his palms, he summoned the shadowy power of death, sending inky tendrils snaking across the dragon's bones. A mournful roar, half wail, half howl, echoed through the clearing, and from the bleached skeleton, a vast black form began to crawl free. Then, as if drawn by some unseen magnet, 2 streams of light burst from the dragon's remains, one ice blue, the other crimson. They surged into the growing shadow mass, carrying with them the lingering souls of the ice and fire dragon kings. Their fusion with Cheng Xiaoyu's shadow creature demanded an enormous outpouring of energy. He could feel the strain as his magic flared hotter, darker. For nearly 5 minutes, he held the process steady, watching in awe and disbelief as ice and fire, death and shadow, all wove together into a single, formidable new being. At last, the merging slowed, and the clearing fell silent, save for the soft pulse of arcane power settling into its final form. Cheng Xiao gave a slight wave of his hand, and the shattered remains of the dragon, swathed in inky shadow energy, began to reshape. Within moments, the corpse had fully reformed into a gargantuan beast, its head crowned by 3 imposing horns. Each horn burned with a different element. One glowed a fierce crimson, another shimmered like pure ice, and the third pulsed with molten gold light. Before him stood a true tri-element dragon. Unbelievable, Cheng Xiao breathed, his heart pounding. The creature before him was as massive as a dormant volcano, and the raw power radiating from its scales far outstripped that of any shadow soldier he had ever summoned. If Cheng Xiao's own strength were greater, he knew he could have bound this dragon into his service, elevating it to the rank of a legion commander. Now, its might remained utterly beyond his reach. Even his strongest shadow warrior, the 3-eyed demon ape, lay far below this level, at best an elite fighter. Suddenly, the dragon's maw opened, and a roaring breath of destructive energy billowed forth. The cavern trembled as the dragon lowered its massive head before Cheng Xiao. In a deep, resonant voice, it spoke its pledge of fealty. "I am Nash, commander of the Light Dragon Corps. I swear my loyalty to you, my king." Cheng Xiao stared in awe. Within Nash's great skull glowed 2 mismatched pupils, one ice blue, the other ember red, a testament to the fusion of 2 dragon souls within him. He stood at the bottom of the hidden spring grotto, wings folded against the cavern walls. Even so, the sheer power emanating from Nash sent a thrill racing through Cheng Xiao's veins. "Is your name really Nash?" Cheng Xiao asked, his voice cracking with excitement. With a solemn nod, the dragon answered, "Yes, my king." Cheng Xiao smiled and bowed his head in respect. "Then Nash it shall be." A distant rumble shook the chamber, and dust rained from the vaulted ceiling. Nash's deep-set eyes flicked over the fissures spreading through the stone. "My lord, this place is about to collapse. Allow me to carry you to safety." There was no time for words. Cheng Xiao sprang into motion, his form blurring into a dark shadow, and landed lightly on Nash's broad forehead. Before he could gather his bearings, the dragon let out a thunderous roar. With bone-shaking force, Nash unfurled his wings, 2 vast membranes of ebony and crimson that stretched far beyond the cavern's mouth. In that moment, Cheng Xiao realized he was astride a creature whose wingspan could blot out the sun itself. High above the crumbling grotto, the pair prepared to flee the dying earth below, and nothing would stand in the way of their escape. The enormous dragon looked hefty at first glance, but in reality its body was as fluid and supple as water. With a sudden ripple, Nash burst through the seething surface of the yin-yang eye of ice and fire, snatching Cheng Xiao from its heart. A thunderous crack split the boiling spring as red and ice-blue waters exploded outward, spraying in every direction. In one powerful sweep of enormous wings, Nash lifted them both free of the pool, hovering high above the steaming water. Drips of molten heat and frost sparkled on his scales, and the mingled breaths of fire and ice fogged the air. Perched on Nash's snout, Cheng Xiao blinked at the horizon, where the faint fish-belly light of dawn was just cresting in the east. The cool morning air still vibrated with the dragon's dual energies, scalding and frigid at once. "Nash, you're awfully big," Cheng Xiao transmitted calmly through their bond. "Could you shrink down a bit?" As shadow soldiers and king, they needed no spoken words to communicate. Obediently, Nash's massive form trembled and contracted, his frame visibly folding in on itself until he settled into a more manageable size, vast and majestic, but no longer so overwhelmingly colossal. Nash descended to the ground and shifted, his massive draconic form shrinking until he stood before them as a tall man with ice-blue skin shot through with crimson veins and long, flowing hair. "Can you take a human shape like the Dragon Emperor?" Cheng Xiao's voice was firm as he studied Nash. "Yes, Your Majesty." Nash inclined his head. "Legion commanders can transform into human form at will, but we usually remain in our true draconic state. That's why human appearances are so rare." He paused, then continued. "When you first reshaped me, I merged with the two fractured dragon souls. I absorbed some of their powers, and those abilities have stayed with me. This," he said, opening his palm, "is my runestone. It contains the 3 special abilities I now possess." In a flash of molten light, a palm-sized stone inscribed with glowing lava-like patterns appeared. Cheng Xiao reached out without hesitation, took the runestone, and with a single focused thought, absorbed its power into himself. In the next instant, a surge of power rippled through Cheng Xiao's mind, as the runestone's magic imprinted 3 ancient dragon skills into his consciousness. First came Light Dragon's Breath, a cataclysmic torrent of radiant energy expelled from the mouth, capable of turning any foe to ash in an instant. Even if the target somehow survived the initial inferno, the very touch of this draconic flame sears life's restorative forces, leaving wounds that cannot heal. And like all draconic powers, its might only grows stronger in the hands of a more capable wielder. Then he felt the chill of dragon fear, the dragon clan's most dreaded art. A soul-shaking aura that cares not for friend or enemy, it drains all strength and courage from those within its radius, plunging them into an abyss of despair so profound that resistance becomes impossible. Finally, the essence of dragonization flowed into him. With this skill, any part of Cheng Xiao's body could be suffused with raw dragon essence. His flesh, bones, even his internal organs would transform to mirror a dragon's, bestowing on him a dramatic increase in every physical attribute. As the final syllables of ancient draconic runes faded from his thoughts, Cheng Xiao stood silent for a moment, heart pounding. The runestone's gifts had settled into his very blood, and with them came unimaginable potential. Chapter 129. The Silver Dragon King Awakens. In the very heart of the Xingdou Grand Forest, ancient trees soared so high and grew so densely that their interwoven canopies blotted out all sunlight. In this primeval darkness lay a modest lake, small enough that one could make out the far shore with a single glance. Its surface was as smooth as polished glass, and its crystal depths glowed like living jade, pulsing with vibrant life. A faint mist hovered above the water, and the heavy, moisture-laden air quivered with the forest's latent power. To any soul master, the surge of vitality here would feel many times stronger than anywhere beyond the forest's core. Standing alone at the lake's edge was a man in black robes, his posture calm yet commanding. Despite the faint lines at the corners of his eyes, evidence of a man in his 40s, his features were strikingly handsome and resolute. A single lock of golden hair fell across his forehead, brushing one cheek and lending him an air of unspoken majesty. He closed his eyes, inhaled deeply, and seemed to draw strength from the life force that shimmered through every drop of water, every leaf, every breath of mist. For a long moment he remained perfectly still, the silence of the forest pressing close. Then, as if awakened by an unseen cue, the man's body trembled slightly. His robes rustled, the surface of the lake rippled, and the mist swirled in eddies of silver light. The golden-haired man opened his eyes, and with that single powerful gaze, the legend of the Silver Dragon King began to stir once more. Today, the Soul Beast Forest's throne was occupied by none other than the Black Dragon King, Di Tian, venerated across the land as the god of beasts. Before him stood a varied assembly of towering figures, each a soul beast of the Stardew Great Forest, all aged beyond 100,000 years and having never strayed from the forest's sacred core. Rumor had it that Xiao Wu's mother had been slain by a shadowy assassin, yet no one could confirm the tale. On Douluo Continent, any soul beast that reaches the century-millennium mark of cultivation must endure a heavenly tribulation, a cataclysmic thunderstorm powerful enough to shatter even the strongest spirits. Those who survive gain but a temporary extension of life. Those who fail are utterly destroyed by the divine lightning. To sidestep this peril, many soul beasts choose to revert to human form and begin their cultivation anew, thereby deferring the tribulation and prolonging their lifespans. Under Tian's imposing gaze, each of these ancient beings now weighed their own fate and the trials that lay ahead. At the heart of the Stardew Great Forest, a gathering of soul beasts stood in human guise. Unlike Xiao Wu, who had retreated into human form to continue her cultivation, these creatures had chosen a far bolder course. Upon reaching their 100,000th year, they had defied the heavenly tribulation rather than submit to it. They refused to accept the notion that fate denied their clan any further advancement. Only those soul beasts that survived the tribulation earned the title Fierce Beast, and only fierce beasts were allowed into the forest's sacred core. Here, by the shores of the Lake of Life, beings aged 200,000 to 300,000 years shared space with even more ancient veterans, some 500,000 years old, others nearing 600,000. Towering above them all was the golden-eyed Black Dragon King, Tian. With a lineage nearly 1,000,000 years deep and power beyond imagining, he was worshipped by countless soul beasts as a living deity. They had convened now in response to a mysterious pulse rolling up from the lake's murky depths. That low, rhythmic tremor set their instincts ablaze. For generations, their master, the legendary soul beast lord, had slumbered in timeless repose. Yet today, whispered rumors claimed his rest had ended, and that the master long dormant had awakened in an entirely new state. Boom! The earth trembled beneath Tian and the other soul beasts. At the same moment, the placid waters of the Lake of Life began to boil, great bubbles rising to the surface as aftershocks rippled through the forest floor. "Master!" Tian cried out, heart racing. The other soul beasts, each having shed their small familiar forms, gazed at the lake in awe. This was the moment they had all awaited. Their revered soul beast master was about to appear. With such power aligned to them, they too might ascend. A low, resonant roar boomed through the trees, as if a slumbering dragon had awoken beneath the earth. Pressure washed over the clearing like a tidal wave, forcing lesser beasts to bow low in fearful reverence. One by one, the assembled creatures shed their disguised shapes, revealing themselves in their full, majestic forms. Towering oaks with limbs like iron boughs, graceful swans with wings spanning the sky, colossal bears whose growls shook the underbrush, and even a three-headed hound bearing all its fierce snarls. Together, these mighty soul beasts formed a silent circle around the churning lake, awaiting their master. Then, with a deafening crack that split the air, the ground cleaved open, and the very heart of the Xingdou Great Forest heaved and quaked, heralding an unparalleled reckoning. The vibrant waters of the little lake roared back in, swallowing the exposed bottom in an instant. Then, without warning, a brilliant shaft of silver light erupted from the earth's fissures. With a thunderous crash, a colossal claw, each digit sheathed in gleaming hexagonal scales, smote the shore. Every scale caught and refracted the light, casting eerie prisms across the trembling ground. The impact carried such raw pressure that every soul beast nearby quivered in fear. Emperor Tian's eyes blazed with ecstasy. He stepped forward, sank to one knee, and fixed his gaze upon the massive claw with unwavering devotion. "Welcome, master," he intoned, his voice rich with reverence. Behind him, the assembled soul beasts pressed themselves flat against the earth, eyes downcast in solemn loyalty to the silver giant. At that moment, a deep, resonant voice rumbled through the air. Another silver claw emerged beside the first, and a majestic form began to crawl from the lake's depths. Before them lay a dragon of peerless beauty, its body draped in iridescent silver scales that shimmered like polished metal. To the soul beasts, creatures attuned to the subtlest shifts in power, this was no mere beast, but an incarnation of draconic splendor. The air crackled with awe as the great silver dragon rose fully into view. The brilliant silver light was so blinding that none of the surrounding beasts dared meet it head-on. Instead, they cowered on the ground, quivering, but their hearts thundered with exhilaration. A deep, resonant voice rolled across the clearing. I sensed the presences of the Ice Dragon King and the Fire Dragon King, and the aura of a dragon never seen before. The voice was so ancient and powerful that no one could tell whether the silver dragon before them was male or female, yet that mystery mattered little. Every creature in sight bowed in reverence. "My lord," Emperor Tian finally managed, voice trembling, "didn't the Ice Dragon King and the Fire Dragon King perish long ago? How is this possible?" He fell silent, eyes wide with disbelief. In the old myths, the dragon god had fashioned 9 dragon kings at the dawn of time. The Ice and Fire Dragon Kings had been 2 of the originals. As for Dician, known as the Golden-Eyed Black Dragon King, or simply the Black Dragon King, he was not one of those primordial 9. He was a direct descendant, a second-generation dragon. In pure strength, he could never rival the ancient Ice or Fire Dragon Kings. Tian's eyes snapped open as a tremor of power coursed through him, rousing him from a profound, magical slumber. In rank and prestige, he was far below the great figures of his family, just another junior dragon among his generation, neither the eldest nor the strongest. "I'm not entirely sure what happened," he admitted, voice echoing across the cavernous hall. "But that energy surge just now, it shook me awake." Across the crystal surface of the underground lake, the Silver Dragon King regarded him with solemn, silvery eyes. Though his scales still shone like burnished moonlight, several bore the dull scars of recent battles. "Tian," he spoke at last, "I have a vital mission for you. I need confirmation. Has the Ice and Fire Dragon King truly been resurrected? My wounds remain grievous, and only his aid can accelerate my recovery." Tian bowed low. "I will carry out your command, my lord." The Silver Dragon King nodded, then extended a foreclaw. A gentle glow gathered there. "Take this dragon scale. When it detects the Ice and Fire Dragon King's aura, it will guide you straight to him. But heed my warning. A formidable dragon clan is making its way to this continent. Stay vigilant." At that moment, a shaft of silvery light burst from the lake's depths. In its luminance, one exquisite dragon scale floated upward and settled into Tian's open hand, pulsing softly with anticipatory power. With this talisman, his quest would begin. "Remember what I told you. When the moment arrives, this fragment of dragon phosphorus will be your talisman, your very life-saving charm." With that final word, the Silver Dragon King, his wounds still aching, slowly sank back beneath the waters of the Lake of Life. As the lake refilled, its surface stilled, and he was gone. Tian inclined his head in acknowledgement. "I understand." Then, lifting his voice so every creature could hear, he called out, "Your Majesty, we welcome you." A chorus of soul beasts answered in unison, "Welcome, Your Majesty." Chapter 130, A Monarch Worth Following. The forest at sunset glowed in hues of gold and crimson, and Cheng Xiao's eyes, half ice, half fire, mirrored the dying light. It had been a full day since he absorbed the rune stone. Though to an onlooker the hours from morning to night might vanish in an instant, for Cheng Xiao they had stretched into an endless crucible of practice and restraint. Now twilight had given way to night, and darkness pressed in on every side. His ice and fire eyes, once blazing with power, had faded to smoldering embers. Yet even in that dim glow, a living spark of flame flickered at their heart. Beside him stood Nash in his human form, the wavering light of his personal flame illuminating his features. He had once served the Dragon Emperor without question, one among many deemed expendable. But after surrendering to the newly restored king, his loyalty had found new meaning. "The king's strength is far from fully recovered," Nash murmured, watching Cheng Xiao with admiration. "Yet look at the might he commands. His combat prowess, his very presence, fills me with conviction I never felt under the Dragon Emperor. There, I was nothing more than a tool. Here I am honored to stand as his subordinate." He shifted slightly, the motion stirring sweet, unfamiliar fragrances on the nighttime breeze. "And these plants, they are unlike any I've encountered. Their scent is so rich, so alive. I don't recognize their species, but they give the forest an almost enchanted air." Cheng Xiao turned his head, noting the subtle smile on Nash's face as he inhaled deeply. The night was silent, except for the rustle of leaves and the distant cry of a lone owl. Every detail, the scent of the undergrowth, the glow of embers in Nash's hand, the echo of power yet to be fully reclaimed, felt charged with promise. In this moment, as darkness enveloped them, both king and knight stood ready. Each was reborn in a new era, bound by a pledge, to follow and to defend a monarch truly worthy of unwavering loyalty. "I'm just not sure what effects these herbs will have once eaten," Nash admitted, frowning as he scanned the clusters of fairy plants around them. "Then why not find out for yourself?" Cheng Xiao replied with a shrug. At that moment, the runestone in his hand turned to dust and drifted away into the air. "My liege, I, and all your subordinates, would never dare touch the king's property," Nash blurted, dropping to one knee in sudden reverence. Cheng Xiao rose gracefully, rolling his neck to ease the stiffness. He offered a hand to help Nash up. "I am not the Dragon Emperor," he said softly. "Although you've been reborn as my shadow soldiers, I've never regarded you as disposable. If you're curious about these fairy herbs, feel free to sample one. After all, this isn't my personal medicinal garden. We must show respect to its rightful owner." "Thank you for the reward," Nash said, his icy blue and fiery red eyes gleaming beneath the black armor that encased him. Even shrouded in that obsidian plating, he remained an unmistakable sight. The herbs of the ice and fire eyes pulsed with raw medicinal energy, an irresistible lure to any soul beast. Nash, though not a soul beast himself, was a warcraft, and his senses recoiled and yearned at the same time when he caught their aroma. It was precisely why he had absorbed the soul of the ice and fire dragon, to withstand the herb's volatile, opposing energies. Without the dragon's power, he would have risked being torn apart by the conflict embedded in those petals. With Cheng Xiao's permission secured, Nash leaned in, sniffing through the cluster of leaves with the keen nose of a monster. It took only moments before he found the specimen he sought, a single, blood-red blossom, its layered petals perfectly resembling a peony. He reached out, eager to taste its potent medicine for himself. Chapter X, The King of Flowers. A single gargantuan bloom rose from the clearing, its petals a deep, dripping scarlet that gleamed like fresh blood in the dim light. The sight was at once breathtaking, and unsettling. Nash's breath caught in his throat. He licked his lips and stepped forward. There it is. Cheng Xiao watched intently. As a master of Warcraft's hidden magics, he could sense the flower's power, far beyond that of any ordinary fairy herb. Its aura pulsed with raw energy. When Nash reached out and carefully plucked the blossom, the air around them seemed to vibrate. Stunned, Cheng Xiao blinked. "Nash, I can't believe your monster's instincts led you to this, the King of Flowers." Nash turned the great red bloom over in his hands. "The King of Flowers?" he repeated, puzzled. "It just feels potent. I don't detect anything unusual beyond its strength." Cheng Xiao stroked his chin thoughtfully. "That potency is precisely its secret. This flower can conceal a monster's aura, shrouding its presence completely." Nash's eyes widened as he studied the petals. After a moment's silence, he dared to ask, "Your Majesty, if I carry this flower with me, would I no longer need to return to your shadow realm? Could I finally stay by your side?" Nash hesitated, the oversized red flower still clutched awkwardly in his hand. Your Majesty." Cheng Xiao scratched the back of his head, sounding as casual as ever. "Don't worry about bowing all the time. You blend right in as a human once you cloak your aura." "Thank you, Your Majesty." Nash bowed again, carefully tucking the flower away. He tried to speak more, but before Cheng Xiao could even catch his words, Nash dropped so low that his forehead touched the ground. Cheng Xiao winced at the sudden show of deference. "Ugh, never mind. Just call me King." He shook his head in exasperation. "Let's move on. I've got other business to attend to." "At once, King." Nash raised his head, and in an instant his form swelled dramatically. Scales tore through his clothes as he grew into a towering dragon. With effortless grace, Cheng Xiao vaulted up and landed atop Nash's broad-horned crown. The moment Cheng Xiao's boots pressed into the dragon's scales, he swept out an arm. From the shadow at his back, two figures emerged, one wreathed in flickering ice-blue light, the other blazing with crimson flames. Their reflections shimmered in the dragon's watchful eyes. The night air trembled with tension as the shadow soldiers knelt in perfect formation beneath the three-eyed demon ape, all eyes trained on their king, who sat astride the colossal head of the dragon Nash. Moonlight glinted off Nash's emerald scales, but Cheng Xiao's gaze was calm and unyielding. "Remain here until I return," Cheng Xiao ordered. "If anyone attempts to intrude without permission, do not hesitate. Eliminate them." A chorus of respectful bows answered his command. Then, with a powerful beat of his cavernous wings, Nash unfurled a span so immense it swallowed the moon. In an instant, the great dragon blurred into a streak of silver light and shot westward toward Tiando City, nestled on the far edge of the Sunset Forest. Deep within the heart of the Star Combat Forest, Tian's jaw clenched as he stared at the dragon scale in his palm. Once it had glowed with the ancient power of the Icefire Dragon King, now it lay dull and lifeless. "Tian, what's wrong?" Brigitte's voice was soft as moonlight. She drifted closer, her form shimmering like an emerald swan. He turned the scale over in his hand, frustration evident on his pale face. "The Scale Master entrusted to me. It's lost its power. I can't sense the Dragon King anymore." Brigitte's wings arched in concern. "But you were so close." "I know," Tian interrupted, his voice tight with worry. "We need to find out why the bond has broken. And quickly, before Cheng Xiao returns. It seems someone has deliberately masked the Ice and Fire Dragon King's true aura," Tian snarled, his eyes flashing with fury as his teeth ground together. He'd failed to fulfill the Silver Dragon King's orders in time, and the shame of it stung him. "I swear, whoever hid the Dragon King's breath will pay for this. I'll tear them apart myself." Brigitte watched him with quiet concern. Gently shaking her head, she stilled her comforting words. Tian was too close to the edge of rage for consolation now. She knew it was best to let him cool down on his own. Meanwhile, several days' flight away, Cheng Xiao sat cross-legged atop the massive dragon Nash, watching the silhouette of Tiando City grow clearer against the dawn sky. As the sun's first light painted the horizon in gold and crimson, she spoke softly. "Nash, let's stop a short distance from the city gates. You're far too large to go unnoticed." With a rumble, Nash obeyed. At 700 meters above the outer wall, his wings slowed and his powerful body drifted into a gentle glide. Below them, Tiando City began to stir, its streets and spires slowly waking to another day. Cheng Xiao touched down lightly on the grassy clearing, his massive dragon form shrinking until he stood before Nash in his human shape once more. Without a moment's hesitation, the two made straight for the gates of Tiando City. He'd arranged to meet Douluo here. There was no need to detour through the Royal Academy and risk running into curious classmates. All he wanted was to put his friend's mind at ease. By first light, Cheng Xiao guided Nash through the sleepy streets to a small tea house, its crimson lanterns barely stirring in the dawn breeze. He paused outside, exchanged a quick nod with Nash, and pushed the door open. Inside, a stroke of jade-green silk flickered across the room. Douluo, ever the early riser, stepped forward with a broad grin. Relief flooded his features when he saw Cheng Xiao safe and well. "You finally made it," Douluo said, voice bright with hidden laughter. Cheng Xiao offered a relaxed smile, sliding onto a low wooden bench. "Told you I would. I knew you'd be worried." "Worried?" Douluo echoed, mock horror in his tone. He swept an exaggerated bow, then, in one fluid motion, cocked his fist and delivered a sharp rap to the back of Cheng Xiao's head. The crack echoed through the small room. Nash bristled beside his king, his dragon-blue eyes flashing as he prepared to breathe fire. Cheng Xiao rubbed the spot Douluo had struck and shot him a fond glare. "You wound me, my friend." Douluo threw back his head and laughed, worry and relief mingling in his bright eyes. "There's no better greeting for a traveler than a solid knock on the skull," he declared. He clapped Cheng Xiao on the shoulder. "Come, sit, drink tea, and tell me everything." With tensions eased by their playful bickering, the three settled around a low table. Steam curled from porcelain cups as Cheng Xiao began to recount his journey through the Sunset Forest, and the real adventure was just beginning. Before the dragon's breath could even form in his mouth, Cheng Xiao's voice echoed in his mind. "Nash, this is my friend. Don't be rude." Chapter 131, Rumors of the Master. The King's Friend. Nash paused, perplexed. As a warcraft, he'd never truly grasped the notion of friendship, but if the king decreed it, he would obey without question. "Kid, who is this?" Douluo leaned forward, spotting the middle-aged man quietly standing beside Cheng Xiao. Cheng Xiao chuckled. I'll explain everything later. Right now I'm starving. Let's get some food first. You didn't say you were hungry. Douluo snorted. Fine, let's go. I haven't eaten either, so I guess breakfast it is. Cheng Xiao wagged a finger at her mockingly. Just so you know, I've barely touched a thing these past 2 days. I've been too worried about you. When we're done eating, I'm going to give you a good talking to. All right, Douluo laughed. Stop scaring me. If you don't eat, I won't get any peace of mind either. You brat, Cheng Xiao teased, shoving her playfully. At Shrek Academy, Tang-san followed his morning routine without fail. After he awoke from the night's sleep, he devoted himself first to practicing the Xuantian technique and then to honing his purple demon eyes. These disciplines had become as essential to him as breathing, a daily ritual he never dared skip. Lightly leaping from the roof, Tang-san landed silently. Having already practiced his purple demon eye, he spent a few more moments refining his hidden weapon techniques before heading to the cafeteria for breakfast. As the earliest riser, he found the canteen nearly empty. After a quiet meal of porridge and steamed buns, his teammates began to drift in. Dai Mubai, Xiao Wu, Zhu King, and Ma Hongjun. Oscar and Ning Rongrong were nowhere to be seen, leaving Tang-san wondering where they'd gone. When he sat back down, Dai Mubai and Ma Hongjun soon joined him, while Xiao Wu and Zhu King claimed seats across the table. Even though they were known as the Shrek Seven Devils, this morning the group seemed oddly scattered. Taking a sip of porridge, Tang-san glanced at Ma Hongjun's scarred arm and asked with genuine concern, Hongjun, how's your injury? Feeling any better? Ma Hongjun swallowed a mouthful of steamed bun and flashed a confident grin. I'm all right, third brother. My skin's tougher than most. Your worries are unnecessary. Tang-san nodded. He knew Ma Hongjun's bravado hid the pain he'd endured while purging the demonic flames from his body. The morning light streamed in, illuminating the simple camaraderie at the table, an unspoken bond that held the Shrek Seven Devils together, even when they seemed on the verge of fracturing. Tang-san nodded. All right. Then he turned to Dai Mubai, who was quietly chewing his food, and asked with genuine curiosity, Dai boss, I've been training non-stop lately, but I heard something terrible happened at the academy, something to do with my teacher. Do you know anything about it? Dai Mubai's jaw twitched. He shot a quick glance at Ma Hongjun, who was doing his best to look innocent. Clearing his throat, he said, Xiao-san, it's not that I don't want to tell you, it's just a really sensitive matter. I honestly can't talk about it, unless Fatty Hongjun here decides to speak up. Ma Hongjun bristled. Hey, don't pin this on me. You were there too. Don't think you can pretend you were asleep and I wouldn't notice. I saw you. Before he could finish, Dai Mubai snorted coldly. Fat man, just stick to what you're supposed to say. Don't go spilling secrets you shouldn't. Ma Hongjun fell silent under Dai Mubai's steely gaze. Tang-san sat across from them, blinking in confusion as the two friends shot tense looks back and forth. Tang-san still couldn't grasp what was so unspeakable about his teacher's situation. Had Teacher Erlong and his teacher been reconciled? Were they a couple now? He rubbed his chin, puzzled, then finally blurted out, Boss Dai, Fatty, you mean the unspeakable thing was that my teacher and Teacher Erlong got back together? Dai Mubai shook his head, a faint sigh escaping him. Xiao-san, you're too young to understand. Master and Teacher Erlong didn't get back together. It was something else entirely. Ma Hongjun. Fatty crossed his arms and shot Dai an indignant look. Boss Dai, didn't we promise never to bring this up around Xiao-san? Dai Mubai merely grinned, eyes gleaming with mischief. Come on, Fatty. Master is Xiao-san's teacher. He has every right to know what really happened. He turned back to Tang-san, his expression growing serious. Not long ago, Master was researching the secrets of Fatty's evil fire technique, and something occurred that I can't even put into words. When it was over, Master lay in bed for the longest time before he could even move. As for why that happened, you'll have to ask Fatty. Tang-san's cheeks flushed crimson as he glanced at Ma Hongjun, who scowled in embarrassment. The three friends stood in uneasy silence, each harboring their own curiosity and their own awkward memories of that mysterious, unspeakable incident. Tang-san had never imagined his respected master could be harmed, least of all by his own sworn brother, Ma Hongjun. Third brother, you can't lay this all on me. It was Master Hu. Ma Hongjun began, but Tangsan's expression had already gone stone cold. He rose abruptly from the table, still clutching his dinner plate, and fixed Ma Hongjun with a hard stare. Fatty, he said quietly, you're like a brother to me, so I won't report you for this. But Master is both my teacher and my father. If you ever lay a hand on him again, I promise you, I won't be so far away next time. With one last warning glance at Ma Hongjun's injured side, Tang San turned and walked out of the cafeteria without another word. Ma Hongjun watched him go, scowling, then jabbed a thumb at Dai Mubai. Boss Dai, why'd you have to bring this up? Now Tang San's threatening me. Dai Mubai shook his head, displeased. Relax, Fatty. He's just talking tough. He won't actually strike you. Ma Hongjun snorted. If he does, don't say I didn't defend our brotherhood. Ma Hongjun slammed his chopsticks onto the table. If I don't have that thing, don't even think about it. He shot to his feet, face flushed, and stormed out of the cafeteria. Dai Mubai froze, then sprang up and barreled after him. Hey, fat man! Wait! If you've got something to say, say it. Xiao Wu watched in bewilderment as the two of them raced down the hall, followed closely by another teammate. She turned to Juju King. What's going on with them? Juju Qing lifted an eyebrow and glanced away. No idea. After what had happened between her and Dai Mubai, she wasn't about to get involved in his troubles. Xiao Wu pouted. Zhu Qing clearly didn't want to talk about it, so she quickly changed the subject. Okay, fine. But when's Rongrong coming back? She said she'd bring me a present before she left. At the mention of a gift, Xiao Wu's eyes brightened. She'd been pushing herself endlessly in training, and the promise of a surprise from Ning Rongrong was the only splash of excitement in an otherwise dull routine. To protect her secret identity, Juju King dared not set foot in the Tiando Royal Academy to look for Cheng Xiao. She had no way of knowing whether any of the academy's instructors were titled Douluos, masters whose power even seasoned Douluos respected. So she waited at a distance, her thoughts running wild. It shouldn't be long now. She recalled the last time Oscar had shown interest in Ning Rongrong. He'd claimed he wanted to join the Seven Treasure Glazed sect, but it was clear he was simply using that pretext to get closer to her. Compared to the two brash troublemakers, Dai Mubai and Ma Hongjun, Oscar's character was infinitely more reliable, if a bit rough around the edges. Just then, Xiao Wu bounded over with her trademark grin. I'm heading off to train in a minute. Want to come with me? Juju King shook her head in amused disbelief. Xiao Wu, I honestly don't know where you get all this energy. She rose to her feet and smoothed her clothes. All right, I'll go with you. Chapter 132, Dugubo's Shock, Tiando City, Yipinqian Tea House. A low buzz of whispers floated around the crowded room. Is that guy really a soul master? He's eating like a bottomless pit. I swear he eats more in one sitting than I do in a week. No wonder he's reached soul master rank. At a corner table, Nash was halfway through a massive breakfast spread, face smudged with crumbs, hands moving so fast he seemed ravenous. Cheng Xiao sat beside him, watching with amusement. Take your time, no one's going to snatch your food, he teased. Nash paused, fork hovering over a plate piled high with steamed buns. He swallowed the mouthful he'd just shoved in, then offered a sheepish grin. Sorry, Your Majesty, he mumbled. This is the most delicious meal I've ever had. I can't seem to eat politely. Cheng Xiao waved him off. Don't worry about it. He glanced over at Dugubo, whose pale face betrayed his shock. What's the matter? Never seen someone with an appetite before. Dugubo drew in a trembling breath and set down his teacup with a rattling clink. He forced himself to swallow some brewed tea, though his throat felt tight. Finally, he managed. So about Nash calling you Your Majesty, what's that all about? Cheng Xiao smiled enigmatically, leaned back in his chair and folded his arms. That, Dugubo, is something you're about to find out. Outside the tea house, whispers turned to stunned silence as a new chapter in their story began to unfold. Is he one of your shadow soldiers as well? Cheng Xiao nodded. Old poison. You guessed correctly. Nash discovered a rare herb in your medicinal garden, soul veil grass. It completely masks the aura of a soul beast, so nobody can detect him. Ah, that explains why I felt nothing. Dugubo stroked his chin, his gaze drifting to Nash, who was tearing into a pile of food with feral enthusiasm. "How strong is your shadow soldier? He seems pretty impressive." Cheng Xiao drummed his fingertips on the table and considered. "With my current power, he can channel the strength of a Soul Emperor level, let's say around the mid-90s. I can't give an exact number, but he's far from weak." He hesitated, then added with a note of caution, "Although you wouldn't stand a chance against him. At his peak in life, I'd estimate his strength at about 99. 99? Dugubo's eyes widened. "Are you serious? I may be known as the weakest among the titled Douluo, but I'm still a titled Douluo. You're telling me your shadow soldier outclasses me? That's a slap in the face." Cheng Xiao caught sight of Dugubo's sly grin and couldn't help but laugh. "So, Old Poison, you really think Nash can't best you? Why don't we put that to the test with a little spar?" Dugubo raised an eyebrow and snorted. "By all means, let's see if he's as strong as you claim." Cheng Xiao's grin turned wicked. He reached over and patted Nash, still mid-bite, on the shoulder. "Hold off on that breakfast for a moment. When you pay, pick up a few extra portions for the other soldiers. Share the feast, don't hog it all." Nash swallowed quickly and straightened. "Yes, Your Majesty." Obediently, he emptied the tea house's entire breakfast supply, then tucked it all away in his soul storage pocket. With provisions secured, the three of them set off from Tiando City toward Sunset Forest. Cheng Xiao had no intention of exposing Nash's true, colossal form at the Royal Academy, and with Dugubo's poisons that didn't discriminate between friend and foe, an accidental contamination would certainly make things interesting. The ride from Tiando City to Sunset Forest was brief, but Dugubo's impatience made every second feel longer. No sooner had they arrived at the yin-yang Eye of Ice and Fire than he was itching to begin. "Cheng Xiao," he said the moment their feet touched the forest floor. "Let's start right away. I haven't trained in ages. Today's the perfect opportunity." Cheng Xiao only offered a faint smile. He pulled breakfast from his spirit guide and motioned to the three-eyed back demon ape to distribute it. While the ape darted off, Cheng Xiao closed his eyes and sent a mental message to Nash. Dugubo wanted to spar, and a warning that if Dugubo were seriously injured, it would be catastrophic. Nash paused, caught off guard by the telepathic warning. He glanced at Dugubo, then inclined his head to Cheng Xiao and adopted a calm, ready stance. "Humph," Dugubo sneered, folding his arms. "I'm a 9-ring Douluo, master of toxin warfare. Stay alert." He thrust out his right hand, and in that instant the air around him seemed to harden, charged with unspoken danger. As Dugubo's 5th soul ring, one of the 9, glowed softly, a cluster of dark green venomous snakes coalesced in his outstretched palm. "5th soul skill, green phosphorus bite," he announced, his voice cold and precise. In an instant, more than a dozen writhing serpents took shape, their scales shimmering with toxic energy. With a flick of his wrist, Dugubo unleashed them. The snakes hissed and lunged forward, fangs bared, aiming straight for Nash. Yet Nash stood perfectly still, expression unreadable, as if Dugubo's attack were nothing more than a gentle breeze. The very essence of a dragon spoke through his composure, ancient strength, impenetrable scales, and a supernatural immunity that rendered poison meaningless. No longer bound to flesh and blood, Nash's form had been reborn by the power of death itself. Any toxin Dugubo wielded simply slid off him like water from a stone. As the snakes slammed against Nash's armored hide, their venomous strikes failed to leave so much as a mark. Dugubo's lips curled into a sneer of disbelief. "Huh? You actually dared to face my 5th soul skill head-on?" he muttered under his breath, eyes narrowing as he studied the unmoved dragon. In that moment, he realized his carefully honed venom had no effect on this impossible opponent, and the battle had only just begun. Nash swung his hand upward, and his crimson eyes flared as blistering flames coalesced on his palm. With a casual flick of his wrist, he sent jets of fire lancing toward the writhing snakes. Summoning the Fire Dragon King's power, the air around him instantly heated to unbearable levels. In less than a second, the glowing green phosphorus venom seethed and evaporated in the inferno. Dugubo's jaw tightened. He'd known Cheng Xiao was poison-proof, that alone had surprised him, but he'd never imagined his prized snake venom could be so effortlessly undone. What he didn't realize was that every one of Cheng Xiao's shadow soldiers carried a gift from their king. Nash, the mightiest of them all, had been granted complete toxin immunity. In stark contrast to the debilitating effects that usually plagued poison victims, his defenses remained untouched. Had Cheng Xiao not forewarned him, Nash might never have tapped into that power, and the battle would already be lost. Cheng Xiao, who'd been watching the duel with mounting tension, suddenly called out, "Old Poison, if you don't pull out some real moves, you'll lose for sure." "Shut your mouth," Douluo snapped, rolling his eyes in irritation. If he'd known Nash could suppress his poison, he never would have agreed to this spar. But it was too late to back down now. Better to show his true power and, who knows, maybe win. Dark emerald light flared around him as his 7th and 8th soul rings blazed to life. 7th soul skill, true form of the green phosphorus snake king, he intoned. 8th soul skill, temporal freeze. A thunderous ripple rolled out from Douluo as a 30-meter-long serpent, its body as thick as a water tank, materialized behind him. The creature's eyes glowed a merciless crimson. With a piercing hiss, it unleashed a jet of venom, forming a pulsating green orb in midair. Then reality itself seemed to shudder and stop. In an instant, both Cheng Xiao and the massive emerald dragon Nash froze where they stood. Even the swirling wind hung motionless, as if time itself had been cleaved in two. Douluo sprang up, driving his foot down hard on the emerald snake's head to pin it in place. Drawing on the depths of his soul power, he sent the jade-green bead hurtling toward the towering dragon Nash. As the bead hovered before the great beast, Douluo's eyes burned with emerald light. "Melt it for me," he commanded. A wave of verdant energy erupted from the bead, bathing the yin-yang eye of ice and fire in brilliant green. Douluo's fingers curled instinctively as the radiance in his gaze intensified. Then, with a decisive clench of his palms, he bellowed, "Break!" At that instant, Nash shook off the spell that bound him. Crimson light flared in his pupils as he inhaled deeply, then unleashed a searing torrent of molten breath. A column of lava, as thick as an ancient tree trunk, hurtled straight toward Douluo. His pupils narrowed. Beneath his foot, the snake's hidden third eye snapped open and blasted out a beam of blinding white light. It struck the lava with a thunderous crack, shattering the molten column like brittle glass. Still, the aftermath was suffused with such unbearable heat, it felt as though Medusa's own petrifying gaze had washed over the battlefield, ready to turn any living thing to stone. The searing column of magma solidified midair, then exploded into a thunderous rain of stone shards. Douluo staggered back, adrenaline still coursing through him. He'd unleashed the Medusa's gaze soulbone skill just in time to nullify Nash's molten breath, but even so, the sheer force had rattled his bones. A fraction of a second's delay, and he would have been incinerated. A thunderous roar split the sky. Nash, the Dragon King, had deliberately held back his full power, yet to have his assault so effortlessly repelled was a grievous insult. Cheng Xiao, watching from a short distance, felt the raw fury radiating from the beast. In that instant, Nash abandoned all restraint. With a deafening flap, the dragon's wings unfurled. His colossal body, towering like a dormant volcano, loomed above them, its head alone dwarfing the green serpent coiled at Douluo's feet. The great wings stretched wide, blotting out the sun like storm clouds, each scale gleaming with a dark crimson sheen. Under the shadow of those wings, the battlefield was plunged into twilight as Nash prepared to unleash his true wrath. Douluo's features twisted with equal parts astonishment and fear as he gazed up at the dragon blotting out the sun, an immense creature that dwarfed even his martial soul. His throat tightened. He tried to speak, but any words he managed sounded feeble and hollow. He had once believed his jade phosphorus snake king to be a marvel of power and size, yet standing beneath this sky-filling behemoth, easily 100 meters long, he felt insignificantly small. In the presence of such overwhelming might, he realized that not even a titled Douluo, and certainly no mere god, could hope to triumph. Chapter 133, The King's Grace. Cheng Xiao's voice suddenly resonated in Nash's mind, startling both the dragon and the frightened Douluo hidden below. "You did it, Nash. You passed," she announced. At once, the great drake knelt, bowing so low that his massive snout scraped the stone floor. "Your Majesty," he rumbled, every word steeped in reverence. "Didn't I tell you to contain yourself?" Cheng Xiao chided, amusement tugging at the edge of her tone. "You're practically making a scene. Never mind, let's revert you now. Nash lifted his head, eyes shining with gratitude. By the king's grace, I am forever humbled, he intoned. In a shimmer of light and crackle of energy, his towering, scaled form shrank into that of a man, and Douluo's jaw dropped in amazement. Cheng Xiao turned her gaze to the trembling figure. You may go, she said calmly. I'll handle the poison master myself. Douluo managed a shaky bow, then slunk away. As he did, Nash stepped forward, bowed again, and dissolved into Cheng Xiao's shadow, melding seamlessly with her own silhouette. With the dragon's wings gone, the air cleared around them, and a gentle cascade of golden light drifted from Cheng Xiao's eyes, illuminating the chamber in warmth. Douluo halted mid-retreat, transfixed by that serene, sovereign glow. He stood rooted to the spot, utterly overwhelmed by the king's quiet, unassailable presence. After a moment, Douluo shook off the dizziness, cleared his throat, and glanced at Cheng Xiao with a half-serious grin. You little rascal, he teased. If anything ever happens to me, you'd better promise to take care of me when I'm old and gray. Cheng Xiao let out a relieved laugh. Don't worry, I'll be the best caretaker you could ask for. Feel free to grow up in peace. Damn it, you're way too earnest, Douluo mock scolded, smacking his lips. I thought you were just joshing me, but you're completely serious. Well, I am a titled Douluo. I've weathered storms of every sort. If I'd run into that soul beast unprepared, I'd have been scared half to death. Cheng Xiao shrugged casually. It's not my fault you didn't believe me, Douluo shot back. Cheng Xiao raised an eyebrow. You're already this shameless at your age. What are you going to be like when you get older? If I'm a bit mischievous now, Douluo said with a playful smirk, you're an old scoundrel. Cheng Xiao fired back. Please, you're no saint yourself. Douluo chuckled and shook his head. You've really opened my eyes today, brat. I may never encounter a spirit beast this colossal again, Cheng Xiao murmured, her eyes still on the creature before them. But with such a powerful ally by our side, we needn't worry about assembling a team anymore, the taller figure replied, his voice gruff but brimming with confidence. Cheng Xiao smiled. Exactly. With Nash's help, the formation of our force is essentially guaranteed. At her words, the two, one imposing in stature, the other far smaller, exchanged triumphant grins. A comfortable silence settled between them as they savored the moment. Meanwhile, back at the Kibao Glazed sect, Ning Rongrong had just returned from Shrek Academy and hurried straight to seek out Grand Elder Gurong, one of the sect's two protectors. She stamped her foot, pouting. Grandpa Bone, why isn't Father back yet? I've got important business. This trip wasn't just for fun. The old man chuckled, his voice gentle. He stood tall, his gaunt frame surprisingly broad, and a single silver strand of hair fell along one cheek. Now, my little princess, there's no need to fret. Your father will return soon, and I'm here to keep you company until he does. Ning Rongrong curled her lip and said with quiet pride, Grandpa Bones, I've grown up now. I'm not a little girl anymore. Bone Douluo Gurong blinked in surprise. The princess had scarcely been away a few months, yet she seemed like a different person altogether. What kind of magic did Shrek Academy work on her? Before she could ponder further, a familiar voice called from beyond the door. I hear our little witch is home again? Rongrong, come out here and let your old man see if you've shot up any taller. At the sound of her father's voice, Ning Rongrong nearly rushed forward, but then stopped herself. No matter how she'd changed, in front of Ning Fengji, she would always be his little witch. With that thought, she turned her back on the door and planted her feet firmly, folding her arms in mock defiance. Bone Douluo Gurong fought back a laugh at the sight. Her form had grown more graceful, her aura more confident, but that same stubborn glint in her eyes was impossible to miss. After a moment, a graceful, dignified middle-aged man entered the hall, flanked by a white-haired elder. These two were none other than Ning Fengji, sect leader of the Seven Treasure Glazed Tile sect, and Sword Douluo Chenshin, one of the sect's two protective elders. The Seven Treasure Glazed Tile sect's reputation as a top 3 power rests not only on its unparalleled auxiliary spirit abilities, but also on the might and wisdom of these two Douluo. As the old saying goes, when sword and bone unite under the sect leader, the resplendent, multicolored pagoda becomes truly invincible. Ning Fengji's gaze fell instantly on his daughter, Rongrong, who sat with her back turned. Concern flickered across his face. He stepped forward, gently laid a hand on her shoulder, and spoke in a soft, regretful tone. Rongrong, it was your father who caused all this trouble. Are you so angry with me that you won't even face me? Her silence stretched on, and Ning Fengji's heart tightened. He drew a slow breath, determined to bridge the gap between them. Please, my child, tell me what I can do to make things right. You've been at the academy a whole year, and I've missed you so much. Miss me? Ning Rongrong spun around in disbelief. Dad, don't you feel a twinge of guilt saying that? It's obvious you just wanted me out of the house. She darted to the white-haired elder standing behind Ning Fengji, flung her arms around him, and beamed up at him. Grandpa Jian, I've missed you more than anyone. You can't be like, well, you know, someone else who says he misses me, but secretly hopes I'd never come back. The warmth of reunion flooded Ning Rongrong's heart. Sword Douluo Continent, whom she fondly called Grandpa Jian, smiled and gently stroked her hair. Rongrong, I've missed you every single day, he murmured as he hugged her close. Ning Rongrong shot a triumphant glance over her shoulder at her father. See? Grandpa's been longing for me, unlike certain people. Ahem, Ning Fengji cleared his throat, a reluctant smile tugging at his lips. Rongrong, your old man misses you too. Rongrong tightened her grip on her braid, her grin both mischievous and affectionate. Humph, since father insists, Rongrong will forgive you. With a light laugh, Ning Rongrong slipped from Douluo Chenxin's embrace and, still grinning, pinched Chenxin's waist playfully. See that, old bones? Doesn't Rongrong seem a bit different these days? Douluo Chenxin stiffened, taken aback by the shift in the young girl's attitude. Frowning, she tapped the comm device at her collar. Master Gurong, I swear, she really has changed since she returned. A cheerful voice crackled back through the link. Of course she has. She's growing up fast, isn't she? Chenxin's expression darkened. Save your flattery. Before Gurong could reply, Ning Fengji cleared his throat and called out softly, Rongrong, come over here. I've got a gift for you this time. He produced a small, intricately decorated box from seemingly nowhere, holding it out with a tender smile. A gift? Father, you've gotten a present for me? Ning Rongrong's eyes lit up, and in 2 quick steps she was at his side, curiosity dancing in her gaze. As she accepted the box, the air between father and daughter warmed with affection. Proof, if any were needed, that the joys of family could soften even the prickliest of spines. Ning Fengji reached out to embrace his daughter, but Ning Rongrong deftly slipped away and crossed her arms with a pout. Dad, she said, first you give me my present, only then will I let you hug me. He laughed softly and handed her a small lacquered box. Here, 2 hidden weapons I bought at auction. They're nothing earth-shattering, but they carry a surprise. They should do you well if you ever need to defend yourself. Rongrong lifted the lid with curious fingers. Inside lay 2 slender darts, sleek and black. She frowned in puzzlement. These? Dad, they're made by Tang San, aren't they? His face went pale. You know him? With a mischievous grin, Rongrong rolled up her sleeve to reveal her own silent arrow strapped to her wrist. Look, they're exactly the same design. Ning Fengji's voice trembled with excitement and disbelief. Tang San, he was my classmate back at Shrek Academy. He stared at the darts as if seeing them for the first time. I never imagined I'd find his work here. I still have several of the more advanced weapons he gave us, Ning Rongrong replied softly. Ning Fengji's voice grew grave. Since Tang San is your classmate, Rongrong, why don't we purchase a large supply of concealed weapons from him and equip our auxiliary spirit masters? That would finally solve their lack of combat effectiveness. Jiandao Chenxin leaned forward with a gentle smile. Rongrong, tell me about him. What's Tang San like? Do you think highly of him? If his skills and character truly measure up, he could even become a grandson-in-law of our 7 treasures glazed tile sect. Rongrong's cheeks turned pink. Grandpa John, please don't match us so hastily. Tang San and I are merely ordinary classmates. The last time someone bullied me, he didn't lift a finger to help. Honestly, I don't like him. Jiandao Chenxin's expression darkened in surprise. Someone dared to bully you? He thought of his cherished little princess. How could anyone look at her the wrong way, let alone lay a hand on her at school? Isn't this tantamount to publicly humiliating the 7 treasure glazed tile sect? Ning Fengji crouched beside his daughter, Ning Rongrong, his concern plain on his face. Though Gu Rong said nothing, the dark scowl on his features and the barely contained surge of his soul power made it clear he was furious. Humph! Madame Jian Dao Chen Xin snorted, her voice cold enough to chill the air. Fengji, I've been warning you, sending Rongrong to that ramshackle academy so far away was a mistake. Now look, she's being tormented in broad daylight. Ning Rongrong took a shaky breath. Father, first Lei Shui yanked my hair in the courtyard. She paused, swallowing hard. Then Dai Mubai cornered me and sneered that I was nothing but a worthless rich brat. At the mention of Dai Mubai, Gu Rong's restraint snapped. With a roar that rattled the hall's pillars, he unleashed a wave of soul power so fierce the air itself seemed to quake. That insolent whelp! How dare he treat my granddaughter so? Grandpa Bone, please calm down, Ning Fengji urged, placing a steadying hand on the bone Douluo's arm. He turned back to his daughter, voice gentle. Rongrong, you've told us everything, right? Ning Rongrong nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. Yes, that's all of it. She left unspoken the night she'd been rescued, uncertain how much her parents could bear to hear. Fortunately, Tang San showed up just in time and held him back, so I wasn't hurt, Ning Rongrong said, relief softening her voice. Bone Douluo's eyes narrowed in anger. Sensing his rising fury, she hurried forward, slipped her arm through his, and gave it a gentle shake. Only when his scowl finally eased did she turn to Ning Fengji. Father, I didn't return without purpose. She began, her tone earnest. There are 3 urgent matters I need to discuss with you. Chapter 134, The 7 Treasure Glazed Sect Makes Its Move. The first thing I want to do is quit Shrek Academy, Ning Rongrong declared, her tone a mix of exasperation and indignation. That place isn't half as formidable as everyone says. It's all smoke and mirrors, selling wolves in sheep's clothing. And to top it off, they have the nerve to brag that one of their alumni became an elder in the spirit hall. Absolutely shameless. Shameless? Came a low, gravelly voice. Protector Douluo Gu Guan, better known as Old Bones, snapped to his feet, his nearly 2-meter frame towering over the room. Never fear, Rongrong. Grandpa Bones will teach those rascals a lesson they won't forget. Tell me, where are those brats holed up? Right, let's go rip that so-called academy to pieces. Protector Douluo Chen Xin slapped his chest, eyes blazing with fierce loyalty. Who do they think they are, insulting our little princess? I say we march over there this instant and settle this ourselves. Only Ning Fengji, Rongrong's father and leader of the 7 Treasure Glazed sect, remained calm. Raising a hand, he gently restrained the 2 impetuous Douluos. Gu Guan, Chen Xin, hold on, he said evenly. Let's hear Rongrong out before rushing in head first. Ning Fengji studied his daughter with concern. Rongrong, you just said you want to drop out. Is it because of what happened at the academy? Rongrong shook her head, but her frustration showed in the way she fiddled with her sleeve. It's not just that one incident, Dad. When you first sent me to Shrek Academy, you told me how remarkable it was, how their monster training and spirit-fighting curriculum were second to none. But after being there for months, I still don't see what's so special. She paused, gathering her thoughts. Monster training is just running laps with weights. And the only time we actually fight monsters is in the spirit fighting arena during sparring matches. They can't even guarantee proper meals for the students, and there's no facility to practice martial soul simulation. Every morning, we line up for theory lectures. Some visiting master rattles off his ideas about martial arts philosophy, and the rest of the day is more running. It's mind-numbing. Her father's brow furrowed. And you're not upset with the teachers from Shrek itself? Rongrong let out an exasperated laugh. No, the Shrek instructors are fine. It's the so-called master, Dean Flender, brought in that drives me crazy. He's always boasting. When I had dinner last week with the leader of the Tiandu Royal Academy's Imperial Fighting Team, that master wouldn't stop talking about how he's the only one in the world teaching 5 martial soul techniques, how he's trained countless Spirit Hall champions. It was nothing but empty bravado. She glanced up, eyes bright with conviction. I came here hoping to improve myself, not to be a running machine for someone's ego. Ning Fengji reached out and took her hand. I understand your disappointment, but before you make any final decisions, give me the details. Who is this master? What exactly happened at dinner? Maybe there's more to the story than just his bragging. Rongrong sighed, relieved that her father was listening. All right, let me tell you everything. A hush fell over the Wuhun Palace's great hall as whispered rumors fluttered through the lantern-lit corridors. On the palace's public message board, an anonymous post blazed in bold characters. A Shrek Academy graduate has somehow become one of our elders. What a disgrace! With their notoriously lax admissions, how on earth did they produce the mainland's top prodigy? A second comment followed in swift reply. Dean Flanders should never have let that so-called master near our students. He's all talk and no talent, bragging about being #1 when he can't back it up. Word is he hails from the Blue Lightning Tyrannosaurus Rex clan, but nobody even knows who his father is. Who would raise such an empty-headed charlatan? Ning Rongrong's heart pounded as she read those Ines. She'd agreed to visit Wuhan Palace out of respect for her father's legacy, determined to prove she was more than just a mischievous witch. But ever since that terrible night, when the mysterious Cheng Xiao had appeared at just the right moment to save her, her faith in Shrek Academy's infallibility had begun to crack. She realized with growing unease that the problem wasn't only the Academy's unconventional teaching methods. Even the so-called monstrous prodigies they prided themselves on sending out were deeply flawed. Perhaps, dare she think it, the entire institution was fundamentally broken. Drawing in a slow breath, Ning Rongrong pressed her palm to the cool marble of the hall's railing and whispered to herself, "Could it really be as bad as they say?" Shrek Academy's troubles run far deeper than we imagined, Ning Fengji thought, watching her sister with a mix of awe and concern. Rongrong, she asked quietly, what were the other 2 issues you hinted at? Ning Rongrong tapped her chin, considering her words. Well, the first is that I've recruited a food-type soul master with innate soul power into our sect's ranks at Shrek Academy. He's technically still a student there, but he's been having a rough time. He believed he'd find better opportunities elsewhere and wanted to transfer out. So I suggested he join our sect instead. He agreed right away. A food-type soul master with innate power? Ning Fengji's eyebrows shot up. Rongrong, are you serious? You actually recruited one of them into our sect? Just then, Sword Dao Chenxin strolled over, ruffled Rongrong's hair, and grinned at Ning Fengji. Why doubt her? If Rongrong says she did it, she did. Besides, don't you remember why that food-type soul master was so easy to convince? Ning Fengji could only smile wryly. The pieces were falling into place, and Shrek Academy's crisis was proving more complicated than anyone had expected. He couldn't have forgotten that Ning Rongrong was not only the little princess of the 7 Treasures Glazed sect, but also his own daughter. Even without those titles, she was undeniably beautiful, a born beauty, despite her slightly awkward manner and shy smile. Ning Fengji, ever the shrewd businessman, caught a hint of something in Ken Dao Chenxin's words, but kept his counsel. After all, if he wanted to win the hand of the sect's princess, mere prodigious talent in auxiliary soul arts wouldn't be enough. Rongrong, what's this one more thing you mentioned? Chenxin asked gently, his eyes warm with affection. Rongrong glanced down, twisting her fingers together until her knuckles whitened, her cheeks flushed pink. Dad, Grandpa Jian, Grandpa Bone, about my birthday gift. She began, voice barely above a whisper. I'd like to give away the unlimited gold card you gave me. Instantly, Chenxin, Ning Fengji, and Bone Douluo Gurong exchanged tense glances. They'd all been through trials that left them wary of sudden pledges and heartfelt confessions, and they knew exactly what an unlimited gold card meant. With that in hand, no request could ever be refused. The credit on that gold soul card is practically limitless, unless the Qibao Glazed sect itself falls. Ning Fengji leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers as he studied his daughter. Rongrong, the person you gave that card to, he's a young man, isn't he? Tall, handsome, and quite strong? Rongrong's breath caught. Father, how do you know? She managed. Ning Fengji's sharp eyes flicked toward Sword Dao Chenxin, who merely inclined his head in confirmation. With a quiet hum, Ning Fengji reached into his robe. He drew out a shining gold card, Rongrong's card, and held it out to her. She stared at it in stunned silence. Father, this is the very card I gave you. Why do you have it now? At last, Ning Fengji's stern expression softened into a thoughtful smile. He rubbed his chin as if an idea had just taken shape. "Uncle John," he said, addressing Chen Xiao, "what would you think about sending Rongrong to Tiando Royal Academy to study?" "You realize should have done this ages ago," Grandfather Jiandao Chen Xiao teased, patting Ning Rongrong's head. "If you're unhappy at Shrek Academy, we'll just send you to Tiando Royal Academy instead. The Tiando Royals are old friends of ours. They'll welcome you with open arms." "Grandpa Jian, you still dote on me," Ning Rongrong laughed, tossing her arms around him. Nearby, Bone Douluo Gurong winced theatrically, as if nursing a sudden toothache at being left out of the affection. Ning Fengji nodded decisively. "Very well, it's settled. Before you transfer, though, would you come with me to Shrek Academy one last time? There's no pressure, only if you want to." Rongrong cocked her head. "Dad, so you're not planning to look for Daimubai?" she asked, puzzled. He smiled, a weight lifting from his shoulders. "No, that's not it. I'm hoping to meet Tang San instead. His hidden weapons are legendary. I'd like to commission one of my own. As an auxiliary soul master, I've always found myself vulnerable. A top-tier hidden weapon could change that." Rongrong's eyes lit up at the prospect, and even Gurong sheepishly nodded in approval. Plans were set, and a new chapter was about to begin for the Ning family. Master Ning held up a sleek, concealed dagger, its edge catching the morning light. "With these hidden weapons, our position will be far stronger," he said, tucking the blade away with a satisfied nod. Ning Rongrong stepped forward, eyes bright with curiosity. "And father," she added, "you mentioned you've recruited an auxiliary soul master for the sect. I've come specifically to see how they're doing." Her father smiled, pleased by her interest. Ning Rongrong returned his gaze and, with a graceful curtsy, said, "Very well, father. Let's set off. I also have some gifts to give to my friends at the academy." She spread her arms wide and beamed, the morning breeze stirring the ribbons at her waist as they prepared to depart. Chapter 135, Shrek and his team. Head to Sunset Forest. Shrek Academy's new training ground was vast, several times larger than their old playground. For years, the Blue Tyrant T-Rex clan had backed the academy. Their future support was uncertain, but for now, the school coffers remained more than adequate. Under the blazing sun, Tang San was the first to arrive. He looked sullen. During breakfast, Daimubai and Ma Hongjun had once again teased him about his master, and the memory still stung. 20 minutes later, the others trickled in, everyone except Ma Hongjun. The day's instructor, known only as the master, was nowhere in sight. An hour passed, and the sun beat down on the assembled students. Just when complaints were about to rise, the master appeared, strolling in with deliberate ease. He gave an almost rhythmic sway of his hips as he walked, a motion so unexpected that Xiao Wu couldn't help but burst out laughing. It wasn't mockery, she simply found his gait irresistibly funny. Clearing his throat, the master surveyed the group. "Today's training won't be here," he announced. "We're heading into Sunset Forest." Murmurs rippled through the students. The legendary woods lay beyond the academy's borders, teeming with both challenge and opportunity. With that, Shrek and his 7 devils snapped to attention, ready to embark on their next trial. A middle-aged man shuffled into view, his hips cocked sharply to one side, his face frozen in a stiff, awkward grin, so bizarre and comical that it was almost impossible to look away. At the echo of Xiao Wu's laughter, the master's expression snapped into something unreadable. After more than a month of rest and treatment, his body had finally healed. Yet the sudden loss he'd suffered still warped his posture, giving him that grotesque, lopsided gait. No wonder Xiao Wu's silver bell laughter rang out. The master, usually so solemn, had undergone a startling transformation, and the contrast was irresistible. It wasn't just Xiao Wu who was trying and failing to keep a straight face. Everyone except Tang San was stifling giggles, none more desperately than Daimubai. He still couldn't believe Ma Hongjun had had the nerve to do what he did that day. More than a month later, the master was still under the weather, so you can imagine how explosive the situation had been back then. Xiao Wu's laughter tinkled on, and Tang San's eyes flew to her, ready to scold. But before he could utter a word, his master quietly stepped up beside Xiao Wu, cutting off Tang San mid-protest. The master's sharp eyes fell on Xiao Wu, and his face stiffened. "What are you laughing at?" Xiao Wu waved her hands defensively, her lips curved in amusement. Master, I'm not laughing at you. Something funny just popped into my head. The master's lip twitched, but he said nothing more. He clearly didn't want to give her any hint of what was on his mind. He cleared his throat, issued a few terse instructions, and then strode to the front of the gathered students. One by one, he swept his gaze across their faces. He found Tang San, but there was no sign of Ma Hongjun. He frowned. Where's Ma Hongjun? Doesn't he know we have class today? Did he oversleep again? I saw Fatty this morning, Dai Mubai spoke up immediately. He was in the courtyard, meditating so deeply at noon that I'm sure he didn't hear the bell. The master's brow knit even tighter. He glanced at Dai Mubai and said, Go fetch him. Right away, master. Dai Mubai saluted crisply and turned on his heel. As he headed toward the dormitories, a round-faced figure came barreling down the path, panting heavily, hair disheveled and robes flying behind him. Master! Ma Hongjun skidded to a halt before them, clutching his sides as he tried to catch his breath. I'm here! Ma Hongjun was the latecomer, but instead of fluster or fear, his face was positively alight with excitement. His master, on the other hand, looked as dark as storm clouds. If not for Ma Hongjun's catastrophic mishap that day, losing his most treasured possessions and winding up in the clutches of his second uncle, he would never have known such despair. It had been the lowest point of his life. And now, with his little brother gone, he felt he'd even lost his right to be a man. Only Luo Sanpao remained at his side. Sometimes Ma Hongjun caught himself daydreaming about the thick white radish he fed Luo Sanpao, imagining that, had his brother survived, he'd be just as big and robust. As Ma Hongjun rejoined the group, his master cleared his throat twice, poised to launch into his usual grand lecture on martial theory. The moment he opened his mouth, however, he caught sight of Ma Hongjun's eager, glowing expression, and scowled. Ma Hongjun, why are you so excited? Master, please don't worry, Ma Hongjun said, waving a hand to calm him. My evil fire hasn't burst forth. Nothing like what happened before will happen again. I've just broken through to level 30, so I went straight to inform the dean. He asked you to go there, and that I should accompany him into the Sunset Forest to hunt for soul rings. When Master heard this, his eyes lit up. Then he nodded in satisfaction and smiled. All right, we'll postpone today's lecture. Everyone, pack up. We're heading to the Sunset Forest so Ma Hongjun can claim his third soul ring. I'll teach you about soul beasts along the way. With that, Master strode off without looking back, leaving the students staring after him in confusion. Xiao Wu crossed her arms and pouted at Zhu Qing. So he cancels class and drags us all into the forest just to teach theory? Didn't we already cover spirit beast lore? Why does he feel the need to lecture us every single day? Zhu Qing stamped her foot in annoyance. My ears are going to get calloused from listening to them, she muttered. Xiao Wu tossed her hair. Right? I can barely stand it. Tang San ignored their grumbling. For him, every one of Master's lectures on spirit theory was a stepping stone to greater strength. No matter what Xiao Wu, Zhu Qing, or the others said, he was determined to absorb every word. He gave them a quick, apologetic smile and turned on his heel. I'm heading back to the dorm to get ready. Don't wait up. With that, he practically sprinted away, excitement bubbling in his chest. Master had stressed time and again that real combat experience was vital, but mastering the underlying theory of martial spirits was even more important. Fully understanding that theory would let him make the most of his abilities in any fight. An hour later, the tall gates of Shrek Academy swung open. Flender, Liu Erlong, Master, and 2 other instructors stood in a proud line, waiting for their champions. Their eyes sparkled as Tang San and the rest of the Shrek 7 Devils arrived in perfect formation. Liu Erlong, a teacher who'd originally planned to stay behind, pressed her lips together. As soon as she heard Master was coming along, she'd insisted on accompanying him, leaving Zhao Wuji behind to guard the academy in their absence. Now she stood at the front, determined and vigilant. Master gave a small nod of approval to the assembled students. The afternoon sun cast long shadows on the academy courtyard, but no one seemed to notice. They were all focused on what lay ahead. Today's lecture would bridge theory and practice like never before, and Tang San could hardly wait to begin. Dean Flanders surveyed the assembled Shrek team and cleared his throat. All right, everyone. Gear up. We leave at once for Sunset Forest. Let me be perfectly clear. Although Master and Teacher Liu Erlong and I will accompany you, it's your job to handle any soul beasts under 2,000 years old. He paused, meeting the eyes of each student. I know some of you still have your differences, but you all come from the same academy. On this hunt, I expect you to set aside personal grudges and help Ma Hongjun claim his third soul ring. That's the only way any of you stand a chance in the upcoming Soul Master Elite tournament. He let the unspoken meaning linger in the air before moving on. Ma Hongjun, ever eager to please, put forward, chest puffed out. Dean, you're wonderful, truly. I'm so touched that you'd look out for me and help me secure my third ring. Flanders let out a harsh bark of laughter. Enough of that. Watch your tongue, boy. Don't go looking for trouble. Ma Hongjun's broad grin faltered for a moment, but he shrugged and laughed it off. Heh! Just teasing, Dean. Just teasing. You'd better believe it, Flanders said with a quick glance at Ma Hongjun. It's getting late. Let's head out. Chapter 136. Tang San arrives at the Yin-Yang Icefire Eyes. The ride from Tiando City to Sunset Forest wasn't long, but every Shrek Academy student knew how dangerous even a brief journey could be. Sunset Forest, lying not far from the city's center, was famed as one of the best hunting grounds for soul beasts in the region. By mid-afternoon, after several hours on horseback, the group finally reached its shadowed edge. Inside the woods, Flanders led the way with two of the Academy's senior brothers, their saddlebags full of provisions and their eyes alert for movement in the undergrowth. Behind them, the rest of the Shrek team followed in single file. Tang San and Dai Mubai rode at the flanks, ready to counter any sudden attack by the forest's more formidable inhabitants. Juju Qing moved ahead of them all, her swift, cat-like steps and keen reflexes making her the perfect scout. They encountered plenty of soul beasts along the way, rust-hued stags the size of ponies, chittering crystal-scale lizards, and a pack of horned badgers that snarled but didn't stay to fight. None, however, were century-old monsters, and Ma Hongjun still desperately needed that third soul ring to advance. In every clearing they paused, searching the brush and the treetops for any sign of an ancient beast. As shadows lengthened, it became clear this part of the forest offered no suitable candidates. Tang San reined in his horse beside Dai Mubai as the group halted beneath a cluster of towering pine and maple. A cool breeze tugged at the leaves, carrying the distant echo of running water. Flanders dismounted and stretched his arms, his eyes scanning the twilight gloom. These woods are too well traveled, he admitted. We'll need to push deeper tomorrow. For now, let's set camp. Juju Qing rounded up the horses, murmuring soft reassurances to keep them calm. Xiao Wu joined her, her fox-like eyes already spotting a level patch of ground near a fallen log. They pitched a simple lean-to, piling blankets and setting up watch clusters. The forest floor crackled underfoot as the last vestiges of sunlight slipped away. At the campfire, Dai Mubai inspected his silver-edged claw weapon, his expression grim. If there's a 100-year-old soul beast anywhere in these woods, we'll find it by morning, he promised Tang San. Tang San nodded, thoughtfully tracing the lines of his blue-silver grass steel. He understood how vital that third ring was, not just for Ma Hongjun's power, but for the team's morale. The deeper they went, the more the forest seemed to leer at them with unseen eyes. Under a sky now spangled with stars, the Academy students settled in for the night. Rest well, Flanders called quietly, voice low enough only they could hear. Tomorrow, we begin again at first light. They extinguished the fire, and one by one the Shrek members disappeared into their blankets. All around them, Sunset Forest sighed and settled into darkness, as if awaiting the coming hunt, and what legends those yin-yang ice-fire eyes might yet reveal. For everyone's safety, Flanders announced, we'll camp here. Thanks to their thorough preparations, they had the tents, large, sturdy, and plenty for the entire group, erected in no time. In a forest full of unpredictable spirit beasts, quick deployment was essential. Once the last stake was driven, Tang San stepped forward. Master, I'd like to scout around the perimeter and use the isolating powder on my body. That should keep soul beasts at bay and help guard against venomous snakes or insects. His teacher smiled approval. Good thinking, Xiao San. You never cease to make me proud. Just don't venture too far. Focus on sealing off the area near camp. Understood, teacher. Tang San dipped his head and slipped away into the undergrowth. Back in camp, Ma Hongjun crouched by the fire pit. With a flick of phoenix flame, he ignited a roaring bonfire and hung a heavy iron pot from the tripod. Fresh vegetables, wild herbs, and chunks of meat soon plunged into the bubbling broth, filling the air with savory steam. They had chosen a natural hollow in the forest floor, an amphitheater of trees whose tangled roots formed natural barriers on all sides. Now, protected by stout tents and the scent of isolating powder, the group could rest with one eye open, ready for whatever the soul beast forest might throw at them. Tang San retrieved a large glass jar from his spatial ring and carefully shook out the fine detox powder he had prepared. As the pale grains settled on the forest floor, something nearby caught his eye, a fallen soul beast lying just a short distance away. His eyes, already tinged with purple spirit energy, lit up with curiosity as he hurried over. Up close, the scene was grim. The beast's corpse was riddled with corrosion, its rotten flesh releasing faint, greenish wisps of toxic gas. Such a powerful poison in the sunset forest? Tang San stared in disbelief. He crouched beside the creature, uncapped a detoxification pill, one of the very anti-venoms he'd concocted, and swallowed it in a single gulp. A few moments of careful observation confirmed his growing suspicion. The vapor matched the deadly miasma he'd once faced in the dueling arena, the one born of green snake venom. In other words, this wasn't a natural toxin at all, but a trap laid by human hands. Tang San rose to his feet and focused, sending out a pulse of soul power. 500 meters ahead, he could just make out a forest shrouded in acrid poison fog. "This might be my chance," he murmured, excitement flickering in his chest. Drawing on his soul strength, he unleashed Ghost Shadow Step and darted toward the hazy line of trees. But before he could reach them, he slammed into a concealed poison formation. The clouds of toxic gas it unleashed were far denser than he'd anticipated. Tang San's hand flew to the pouch at his waist, his supply of detoxification pills, but he knew instantly it wouldn't be enough to see him safely through this barrier. His brow tightened. Something valuable, perhaps even life-changing, lay hidden beyond that formation, and with the Continental Elite Spirit Master competition fast approaching, Tang San couldn't afford to let an opportunity like this slip away. His current strength wasn't yet enough to claim the championship. Every edge counted. Even if the odds were only 1 in 1,000, he was determined to press on. He wouldn't walk away now. Tang San eyed the ground beneath him and thought, with the 8 spider lances piercing tips, I might be able to tunnel underneath this array. A glint of determination flared in his eyes as he summoned the lance in a flash of purple light. The 8 spider-like spears drove into the earth, burrowing downward and carving out a deep shaft in moments. Without a second's hesitation, he swallowed one of his own detoxification pills and leapt into the newly formed pit. At the bottom, he reached for a handful of blue-silver grass sprouts, his living scouts. Using their innate sensitivity to poison, he pushed the grass into the surrounding soil and watched it wither, then regrow, inch by inch, charting a safe path beneath the venomous array. Again and again he probed, each failed shoot returning shriveled and lifeless, until, at last, one blade of grass broke through the far side of the tunnel untouched. A smile flickered across Tang San's face. The unharmed sprout meant he'd breached the poison's reach. Bathed in the gentle glow of the grass, he turned his attention upward and began to dig his way back toward the surface. About 10 minutes later, a slender steel shaft breached the rock's surface, and a moment after that, a dust-caked man burst forth. Tang San wiped grit from his eyes, flexed his limbs, and took in the scene around him. He had drilled his way up to the summit of the Yin-Yang Icefire Eye Mountain. From this vantage point, he peered down into a deep valley shrouded in rolling steam. A faint tang of sulfur hung on the hot air, and the mist below swirled as if hiding something vast and bottomless. Tang San's lips curved into a grin. "Just as I suspected," he murmured. "All this stee, there's bound to be a hot spring down there. A godsend for sure." He set the 8 spider spear hafts at his back into motion. With a sharp whoosh, each spearhead embedded itself in the sheer rock face. From a distance, the ensemble resembled a gigantic, many-legged spider. Tang San planted his feet, then leaned back, letting the spears, each as strong as tempered steel, support his weight. Carefully, he lowered himself down the cliff, the 8 spears alternately drawing taut and slack as he inched toward the valley floor. The farther he descended, the more his pulse quickened. Steam billowed up around him, warm and humid against his skin, while the sulphurous scent grew stronger. After a few tense minutes, he neared the bottom, and then through the haze a flash of blue caught his eye. A figure streaked past on the rock face, descending even faster than he was. Tang San's eyes narrowed. That brilliant azure glow, it could only be one thing, the legendary Icefire Dual Grove Eye, manifesting in some strange mobile form. Heart hammering, he steadied himself on the final outcropping of rock. Whatever, or whoever, that blue apparition was, it had just plunged into the swirling mists of the valley below. Tang San tightened his grip on the spider spears, leaning forward with renewed determination. The true trial, it seemed, was only just beginning. Though night had fallen, Tang San, his newly awakened purple demon eyes blazing, felt no darkness as he surveyed the valley below. No sooner had he landed than he activated his enhanced vision, and the sight before him stole his breath. Not far off lay an oval hot spring pool, its waters swirling in milky white and deep crimson. But instead of the sharply divided streams described in the Xuanqian Baolu, these icy and fiery hues bled into each other, forming strange gradients of pinkish steam. According to the ancient text, the legendary spring of ice and fire should sustain 2 perfectly separate flows, one of pure frost, the other of raging flame. Yet after the dragon Nash had absorbed the remnant soul of the Ice and Fire Dragon King, the very source of the spring's power had been stolen. With that foundation gone, such abnormalities were only to be expected. Tang San's heart throbbed with tension as he stared at the mingled waters. He'd studied every line of the Xuanqian Baolu, but nothing could have prepared him for this surreal scene. What lay ahead, he realized, would be far more unpredictable than any record or prophecy had ever warned. According to the Xuanqian Baolu, the 3 Treasures Furnace is famed for its singular conditions. Each of its 3 chambers is a marvel in its own right, a focal point for the world's purest spiritual energy. Yet the ice and fire seals before him were clearly warped by some external power, their true form distorted beyond recognition. Tang San's sharp mind raced through the ancient text. Legends had long spoken of these ice and fire seals as the crystallized essence of heaven and earth. To behold them, even in altered form, was astonishing, but it didn't deter him in the slightest. After all, he had always believed that if something existed in legend, it could be found and mastered. Drawing in a steady breath, Tang San let his excitement show in the brightness of his eyes. A thrill ran through him. Such a confluence of spiritual energy could only be protected by formidable barriers, and yet here he was, on the brink of uncovering it. Today's triumph felt like divine providence. All the effort he'd spent digging through earth and poison formations to reach this place had led him to this very moment. "Ice and fire seals," he whispered, voice tinged with reverence and determination. "I, Tang San, have arrived." With that, he squared his shoulders, ready to break through whatever force still held the seals in thrall and claim the treasure that lay beyond. Chapter 137, The Arrival of the Golden Triangle. When Tang San finally stepped into the legendary treasure land, even his extraordinary composure gave way to excitement. He activated his purple demon eyes, and a crystal violet glow sparked in his irises. Though everything around him still seemed shrouded in mist to an ordinary observer, Tang San perceived the scene with razor-sharp clarity. Under the soft luminescence of the moon and stars, every blade of grass and leaf took on unmistakable definition. Encircling the famed ice and fire dual eyes lay an endless sea of vegetation, towering ferns, twisting vines, and most precious of all, countless varieties of immortal herbs. To Tang San, this was paradise incarnate, a realm overflowing with treasures beyond imagining. He felt his pulse quicken, excitement blending with a fierce greed as he hurried forward. At the edge of a milky white spring, Tang San knelt down for a closer look. Just beyond the rippling water grew a curious plant. Its stems bore single, alternately arranged leaves on slender, curved petioles, each leaf an elegant oval with a slight heart shape at its base. The plant's yellow-brown hue and delicate form marked it as something extraordinary, a rare treasure awaiting discovery in this fabled land. Tang San's palm rose, his skin cool and smooth like jade, as he gently touched the crimson bloom. He exhaled in excitement. "Cinnabar lotus," he whispered. "Such a cold-natured herb. If I incorporate it with my spirit blue silver grass, perhaps it can develop fire resistance. In the upcoming Spirit Master competition, it could be a game-changer." Renowned for its affinity with yin, the cinnabar lotus radiated a deep, chilling energy that could counter dryness and heat. Its rarity alone made it precious, and it was famed for restraining fire-based toxins. Just as he prepared to harvest the lotus, a soft, intoxicating fragrance drifted across the bank, halting him in mid-motion. He turned to find a single, colossal flower in pale pink, its leafless stem soaring nearly 3 feet high. The blossom itself stretched more than a foot across, each petal translucent as if carved from crystal. Enveloped in swirling mist, the petals seemed to float and sway where the red and white springs converged. Unable to resist, Tang San approached the ethereal bloom. The instant he set eyes on it, a veil lifted from his mind, and clarity flooded him. A glimmer of realization sparked in his gaze, and he blurted out, voice trembling with awe, "Impossible! It's actually fragrant Chiluo immortal grade." Tang San's heart thundered in his chest. If discovering the cinnabar lotus in his past life was chance, then uncovering this fragrant Chiluo immortal herb was nothing short of fate. With its legendary antitoxin properties, no poison array, no miasma, no matter how deadly, could ever stop him. A surge of triumph coursed through him. "Heavens themselves must be smiling on me," he whispered, eyes alight. "With this herb, even the fiercest venoms are powerless." He felt the lotus pulse beneath his touch, its petals shifting between icy blue and molten crimson. Strange, yes, but utterly worth the risk. Now, if only he could unearth one more herb capable of suppressing the shadow attribute, Cheng Xiao's soul beasts would stand no chance. Before Tang San could probe deeper into the glade, the shadows ahead writhed unnaturally. A massive form slithered from the undergrowth, then expanded into a grotesque demon spider with a human face twisted in rage. The creature froze the moment it glimpsed the 8 spider spears fanned out behind Tang San. Stalwart, gleaming weapons that seethed with lethal intent. It recoiled for a heartbeat, then unleashed a blood-curdling howl. In that instant, the demon spider surged forward, its front legs raised like jagged lances, each tipped with razor-sharp spines aimed straight at Tang San's heart. Startled, he barely had time to react, snatching up his spears as the first 2 spines hurtled toward him with murderous speed. Tang San slammed 8 spider spears into the frozen ground, and the moment they bit into the earth, his soul power surged to life. Instantly, he triggered the ghost shadow trace, vanishing in a wispy blur as the man-faced demon spider lunged for him. "Damn it! How did this thing get into the ice and fire fen?" he muttered, grimacing as he twisted away from the creature's snapping mandibles. He'd endured the poisonous miasma to reach this place, yet here lay the very demon he'd hoped to avoid. Could it be the fen's guardian spirit? Before he could answer his own question, 2 figures stepped from behind a colossal, frost-coated tree. The first was tall and lithe, his skin the deep hue of emerald jade, hair as white as moonlight, and his eyes glowed with a cruel green fire. Beside him stood a warrior shrouded in shadow, clad in armor black as obsidian. His hair, ice blue tipped with streaks of red, fell in icy waves over broad shoulders, and the oppressive weight of his presence seemed to freeze the very air around him. Tang San's heart pounded. He had arrived in the ice and fire fen expecting trials, but nothing had prepared him for these 2. Now, with the man-faced demon spider bearing down again, he braced himself for a battle that would decide his fate in this legendary realm. Scene 1. The Royal Medicine Garden. Moonlight filtered through the trellis of the imperial herbarium, casting silvery patterns across rows of precious plants. Suddenly, Douluo's raspy voice cut through the stillness. "Who are you? How dare you sneak into my garden to steal these medicinals?" From the shadowy undergrowth, Tang San twisted aside a sweeping strike from one of the garden's guards. His lithe silhouette slipped between the leaves as he reached for a cluster of rare purple roots. Douluo's cold eyes narrowed. "Seize him," snarled Nash, standing at Douluo's side. His deep voice rumbled like distant thunder. "The king is in deep cultivation. I will not allow anyone to disturb him." He raised a hand, and an unseen wave of killing intent rippled outward. Even the stalwart Douluo visibly stiffened at the murderous aura. Tang San's heart pounded. He had anticipated a few ordinary guards, but not this level of hostility. He braced himself, ready to fight his way out. Scene 2, the Sunset Forest. A warm, amber glow bathed the treetops as dusk settled over the forest. Two figures stood in the center of a small camp, their faces etched with concern. "Flender, have you seen Tang San?" the master asked, scanning the perimeter. He lifted his hand to shield his eyes from the dying light, but there was no sign of his disciple. Flender's brow furrowed. "Tang San's missing?" The master's expression darkened. He said he was going out to spread repellent powder to drive off the soul beasts, but he hasn't returned. I fear he may be in danger. His usually gentle eyes sparkled with determination. He drew in a steadying breath and clasped his hands before his chest in a swift motion. "Luo-san, come forth!" In an instant, a swirl of lilac soul force leapt from his palms, coalescing into a stout, pig-like creature with watchful, dog-like eyes. Luo Sanpao shook itself, emitting a low growl of readiness. Together, the master and Flender mounted their soul beasts, Luo Sanpao at the master's side, and plunged into the dimming woodlands. Somewhere beyond those trees, and countless dangers, Tang San fought for his life. They would find him, no matter what it took. "Sanpao, clear the way and lead us to Xiao-san. Nothing's happened to him. I can feel it." The master drew a small token that Tang San had used from the soul guide and held it under Luo Sanpao's nose. At once, Luo Sanpao gave two eager yelps and bolted off into the forest. Without hesitation, the master and his companions sprang to their feet. "Xiaogang, what's going on?" Liu Erlong called from inside the tent. He pushed aside the flap and stepped out, drawn by Luo Sanpao's excited cries. The master paused, brow furrowed. "Erlong, I'm afraid Xiao-san is in trouble. Flanders and I will go after him. Sanpao's sense of smell is unbelievably sharp. He'll lead us right to him." "Mind if I come along?" Liu Erlong asked. The master said nothing but quietly released his spirit ring. With Flanders at his side and Liu Erlong close behind, he plunged into the depths of the sunset forest, following Luo Sanpao's swift, sure-footed trail. They pressed on through thick undergrowth and shadowed groves, but despite their efforts, not a trace of Tang San appeared. Flanders and Liu Erlong both paused, a shiver of unease running through them as if something unseen lurked in the darkness. Flanders stepped forward and gently pressed Liu Erlong's shoulder. "Xiaogang, wait a moment." Liu Erlong, whom everyone called Xiaogang, turned, his expression serious. "What is it, Flanders?" Flanders lowered his voice. "Do you smell that? Something's off, almost like a fishy stench." For a heartbeat, Liu Erlong looked puzzled. Then he called to Luo Sanpao, the soul beast at his side. "Sniff it out, Sanpao." The beast drew in a deep breath. Seconds later, a faint but unmistakable odor drifted through the air. "There is a fishy smell," Liu Erlong admitted, brow furrowing. "Could it just be the swampy depths of Sunset Forest?" "No," Flanders replied firmly. "It's not natural. It smells like poisonous gas, like the air itself is tainted." He shook his head, eyes narrowing in concern. Alarmed, Liu Erlong pressed his hand over his nose and mouth to avoid breathing it in. In the stillness of the forest, the two men exchanged a tense glance. They had never ventured this deep into Sunset Forest before, and now it seemed the forest itself had become their greatest threat. "I'm going up. See if I can spot anything," Flanders called out. At his words, the 7 rings on his arm blazed to life as he triggered his martial spirit. With a powerful burst, he shot into the sky. Breaking free of the dense canopy, Flanders scanned the forest below. Not far off, a thick pall of sickly green mist lay draped over the treetops, hiding whatever lay beneath. Peering closer, he made out the faint outline of a poison formation woven through the undergrowth. Though its perimeter wasn't huge, it spread across a surprisingly wide area. Without a second thought, Flanders dove back into the trees and raced to find his master and Liu Erlong. "There's a poison array up ahead," he panted as he skidded to a halt before them. His master's eyes went wide. "Douluo is said to live in the Sunset Forest," he murmured, voice tight. "This must be his work. Could Xiao-san have fallen into one of his traps?" Flanders ground his teeth. "If that's true, we're in deep trouble." Liu Erlong drew in a sharp breath, and together the three of them sprang forward, their figures blurring as they tore toward the poison array, determined to save their friend. Trapped within the deadly poison array, the three warriors had no choice but to unleash their fused martial souls technique. In an instant, the tightly packed poison needles shattered under the technique's might. A thunderous boom ripped through the formation, gouging a massive breach in its core. From that opening burst forth a dragon wreathed in golden light, streaking toward the heart of the array as if drawn by some hidden force. On a side note, I finally caught up on yesterday's work, despite my computer's tantrums. Constant restarts and freezes nearly drove me to throw in the towel. Thankfully, it held together in the end, sparing me from calling in sick for a second day straight. Eyes ablaze with icy fire, Tang San twisted in midair to dodge the man-faced demon spider's strike. In his focus on evasion, he didn't notice a figure in green robes standing silently nearby, Douluo, who had just appeared on the scene. The moment the spider confronted Douluo, it dissolved into a plume of black smoke and vanished without a trace. Using his ghost step, Tang San came to a halt and spun around, only to find empty air. "That spider was right on my tail a second ago," he muttered, bewildered. "Where could it have gone?" He drew in a steadying breath and surveyed the darkness, senses alert. Then, without warning, a sudden chill washed over him. Tang San's muscles tensed and he frowned as goosebumps prickled his skin. He pivoted once more and froze. Not far behind him stood the same old man in green he'd encountered weeks earlier in the Tiando Royal Palace. Tang San's heart skipped a beat as his eyes widened in recognition. I pushed through the mist-shrouded forest until I came upon a hidden glade where the air itself seemed charged with spiritual energy. Exotic herbs, each leaf shimmering with an otherworldly glow, sprouted from the earth as though nourished by heaven and earth's very essence. No wonder this place was fabled, a sacred ground for cultivating the rarest medicines. A raspy voice cut through the silence. "Tang San," it snarled, "you've got nerve, daring to plunder my garden." I looked up to see Douluo, the poisoned Douluo I'd once sparred with at Shrek Academy. His eyes flared with cruel green light, venomous power radiating from him like steam. I squared my shoulders. "I'm not stealing," I said coolly. "I'm simply putting these herbs to their proper use." Douluo threw back his head and laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. "Boy, you're one of those Shrek Academy brats, right? You steal my treasures, then have the gall to argue with me? Do you want to invite death?" I let the accusation roll off me and met his glare without flinching. "I didn't steal. This sanctuary is open to all righteous souls. If I'm allowed in, it's because I've earned the right. Since when do these herbs bear your name alone?" At my words, Douluo's eyes blazed brighter. A murderous aura erupted around him like a storm unleashed, lashing out toward me with palpable force. I braced myself, jade-smooth palms tensed for whatever poison-laced attack he would unleash next. Puff! A strangled cough erupted from Tang San's lips, and a spray of blood spattered the ground. He staggered back a dozen paces before catching himself. Under the weight of Douluo's pressure, Tang San's azure silvergrass erupted, and the soul bone he'd just hidden shot back out, sprouting 8 jagged, spider-like spears behind him. The moment Douluo laid eyes on those protruding soul bones, his green eyes glittered with greed. "Well, well," he murmured, voice thick with anticipation. "What luck, to stumble upon such a rare treasure. Boy, you've done me a fine favor today." Before Tang San could react, Douluo blurred forward. One rough hand shot out and wrapped around Tang San's throat, hoisting him off his feet as easily as a toy. Green fire danced in Douluo's eyes while he licked his dry lips, drinking in the sight of the helpless youth. In that instant, Tang San seemed to him less a person than a prize waiting to be claimed. "Since you stole from me," Douluo hissed, "I'll exact payment in kind." His iron grip crushed Tang San's wrist, pinning him in place. The other hand tightened around his neck, cutting off any chance of escape. Tang San's body jerked at the choking vice, and the cruel bargain was sealed. "How dare you, Douluo? If you kill me, you'll never get your hands on the treasure." Tang San's heart pounded like a war drum. This was the first time he'd felt genuine fear on the Douluo Continent, an all-too-real promise of death. Almost on instinct, the 8 spider spears at his back shot forward in unison, slicing through the air with deadly precision. But before they could reach Douluo, a sickly green glow rippled outward from his body, forming an impenetrable barrier. The spears struck it with a series of hollow clangs, creating only faint emerald waves. No matter how razor-sharp the steel, it was powerless against Douluo's defense. Douluo chuckled coldly. "I've lived long enough to know there's nothing I can't do." With a cruel twist of his wrist, he unleashed a surge of poisonous soul energy from his palm. Tang San barely had time to register the attack before agony erupted in his chest, every heartbeat a dagger twisting deeper into his heart. His vision blurred, his limbs went limp, and with a final gasp, he collapsed into darkness. Chapter X. Douluo's eyes blazed with greed as he hovered over Tang San, his palm suffused with sickly green light. "Sister, sister, this attached soul bone belongs to me." With a brutal shove, he sent Tang San crashing to the rocky ground and reached for the 8-spider spear lodged in his back. Just as Douluo's fingers closed around the spear's hilt, a clear, indignant voice cut through the tense air. "Douluo, if you even think about harming him, you'll pay with your life." Douluo froze. He swung his head toward the sound to see 3 figures hurtling down the mountainside, their movements so swift they seemed to blur. Ice and fire aura flickered in their eyes, Liu Erlong and Flanders, each pulling their master, Grandmaster Tang, along with them. "Little San," they cried in unison, faces drained of color. They skidded to a halt, staring in horror at Tang San, still pinned beneath Douluo's heel as the intruder pried at his soul bone. Panic etched every line of their faces. If Tang San died here, how could they ever face Tang Hao? One roused fury of his stature could raise the entire Shrek Academy without a second thought. Douluo smirked. "You're too late," he taunted, fingers poised to wrench free the 8-spider spear. But before he could seize it, Liu Erlong lunged, his spirit power flaring like a tiger unleashed. Flanders charged from the other side. With a roar, Grandmaster Tang thrust his staff forward in a brilliant arc of light. In that instant, Douluo's smug expression cracked in surprise, and then, in pained realization, he cried out as 3 torrents of combined spirit force slammed into him simultaneously. Freed by the sudden assault, Tang San rolled onto his side, wincing as he clutched his back. Flanders knelt beside him, gently pushing him away from the danger zone. Liu Erlong cast a shield of icy blue spirit energy to hold Douluo at bay, while Grandmaster Tang advanced, staff raised for the killing blow. Douluo staggered backward, clutching his wounded side. His green aura flickered erratically, then faded. "This isn't over," he hissed, before vanishing in a swirl of dark chi. As the mountain fell silent once more, Grandmaster Tang lowered his staff, relief and lingering concern in his eyes. Flanders pressed a healing talisman to Tang San's back. A soft glow seeped into the wound, knitting torn flesh and soothing pain. Breathing heavily, Tang San managed a shaky smile. "Thank you, all of you." Liu Erlong glanced up at Grandmaster Tang, then back to Tang San. "We can't stay here. He'll regroup. We should return to the academy and prepare." Flanders nodded. "And let Master Hao know what happened. He deserves to hear the whole story." Grandmaster Tang helped Tang San to his feet. As they gathered their strength, the mountain breeze whispered through the pines, carrying with it the promise of both peril and the unbreakable bonds of comrades who would stand together, no matter what threats lay ahead. Douluo's lips curled in contempt. "So that's why this kid dared to steal my medicinal herbs. You've been covering for him all along? The little brat gets roughed up, and now Big Brother shows up to pick up the pieces?" "Enough with your nonsense, Douluo," Tang San's master growled, eyes burning red. "Touch my student again, and I'll face you, even if it costs me my life." He drew in a ragged breath and bellowed the name of his spirit skill, Thunderfart, threefold earth-shattering Ba, Rage. The moment the words left his mouth, a golden soul ring burst from his aura and fell at the feet of his faithful companion, Luo Senpao. The massive hamster emitted a low roar. It inhaled so fiercely that the air whistled like a tempest. Its round belly ballooned in seconds, swelling into a gargantuan orb, while its clear blue eyes blazed with excitement, and the golden ring around its body shone like molten metal. Then, with astonishing speed, the inflated behemoth rocketed upward. Spinning in midair, it aimed its furry hindquarters squarely at Douluo, ready to unleash its legendary explosive power. Poof! A thunderous blast of flatulence erupted, and a streak of yellow light shot directly at Douluo. Luo Sanpao's legendary stink attack had been unleashed. Dugubo's eyes flared emerald. "Going to die, are you?" With a grunt, he pressed his toes into Tang San's back, then powered his thighs upward like coiled springs, catapulting the prone boy into the air. Before Tang San could react, Dugubo seized his hair, spun him around, and slammed his head into the onrushing yellow beam. Tang San crumpled, blacking out from both the impact and the foul stench. Moments later, he snapped awake, lungs burning as the putrid aroma flooded his senses. He gagged violently, vomiting in disgust. From the sidelines, Flanders of the Golden Iron Triangle swooped in. He dived at Tang San with blistering speed, catching him expertly midair. But the lingering aftershock of Luo Sanpao's stink was too much. Tang San, still pinching his nose, retched once more, and sent the vile contents spraying across Flanders's crystalline spectacles. Time froze. Flanders stared down at his soiled glasses, bile rising in his throat. He wanted to hurl Tang San away, to escape the rancid mess. Then he thought of his father. Steeling himself, he clamped his mouth shut against the nausea, held his breath, and silently set Tang San gently on the ground. Despite every instinct screaming otherwise, he would see his comrades safe. "Golden Iron Triangle, I know all your names," Dugubo said coolly, a trace of contempt lingering in his eyes. "Two of you wield soul rings above level 70, and your big soul hasn't even cracked level 30, yet you still have the nerve to swagger onto my turf? Are you here to die?" The three masters felt their hearts sink. Even combined, they might last 2 exchanges against a titled Douluo like Dugubo, and then run for their lives. But who could truly escape his wrath? They glanced at Tang San, whose eyes had dimmed and whose lips foamed with exhaustion. Their chests tightened in helpless distress. Gathering what courage they could, one master spoke through gritted teeth. "Dugubo, we bear you no ill will. Tell us, why have you arrested our disciple?" Dugubo laughed, low and mocking. "Arrest your disciple?" He spread his hands as if the notion were absurd. "Tell me, why on earth would I bother? He came sneaking into my herb garden, stealing my medicinal supplies. I had no choice but to stop him," the alchemist master insisted. "That's a lie," the Zephyr sect master spat back, jabbing a trembling finger at Dugubo's nose. "Xiaosan has always been kind and respectful. He would never steal. Don't you dare slander my disciple." Dugubo's eyes flared with indignation. "Who are you to point your finger at me?" he growled. A beam of sapphire light shot from his gaze, and the air itself seemed to chill under the weight of his soul aura. Before the master could react further, Flanders and Liu Erlong sprang into action. Both men threw themselves between Dugubo and the Zephyr sect master, the obvious weak link in the confrontation, as the titled Douluo's overwhelming soul pressure descended like a crushing mountain. Had they not braced themselves together, that single onslaught would have reduced the master to nothing more than a blood mist. "Enough," Flanders thundered, planting himself defiantly in front of the shaken sect master. The clearing fell into an uneasy silence, power crackling in the frozen air. He knew in his gut that if this continued, if Dugubo truly meant to kill them, then Tang Hao's thirst for revenge would be the least of their worries. He couldn't be sure any of the 4 of them would make it out of the Sunset Forest alive. Wiping sweat and grime from his face with the back of his sleeve, Flanders forced himself to straighten up and gave Dugubo a respectful nod. Lowering his voice, he tried to sound diplomatic. "Senior Dugu, Tang San is only our junior disciple. You accused him of stealing your medicinal herbs, but I'm convinced there's been a misunderstanding. If you've suffered a loss, we'll compensate you in full. As a titled Douluo, you have the means to settle this quietly. Surely you can let the matter drop?" Flanders thought he'd been subtly tactful. He hadn't even mentioned Tang Hao's name, and he'd offered Dugubo a face-saving exit. But the man standing before them was no one to be bargained with. Dugubo, the poisoned Douluo, was famously temperamental and unpredictable. Mercy, it seemed, was not part of his nature. Chapter 139, Mixed Blood Dragon Clan, Golden Holy Dragon. "Who do you think you are, telling me to forget it?" Dugubo's eyes glittered as a cold smile curled his lips. "You do realize I'm a titled Douluo. The only reason I haven't ended you already is out of respect for your Golden Iron Triangle. Otherwise, do you really think you'd still be breathing?" He straightened his posture, the smile widening. But I've been in a foul mood lately. You three may not be much on your own, but you make excellent human punching bags. Flender's face drained of color. Humiliated by Douluo, one of the most feared fighters in the Douluo Continent, he could only grit his teeth and swallow his fury. Ha, don't think any of you are walking out of here alive. I've been dying to test a new poison technique. What better guinea pigs than you lot? And don't forget, I'm known as the poison title Douluo. Luo chuckled darkly beside him. Trust me, torturing you is far more entertaining than simply slaying you. Douluo laughed, the sound echoing in the tense air, then waved a hand dismissively. This is my territory. No one enters or exits on a whim. At his command, a rippling emerald-green aura burst from his body. In an instant, concentric rings of soul energy spun upward from his feet, each one humming with deadly intent, an unmistakable sign that the real battle was about to begin. Spirit rings erupted into the sky at once, 2 yellow, 2 purple, 5 jet black, and 9 soul aura rings, each glowing with breathtaking brilliance. The shimmering light cast Flanders' icy gaze and Liu Erlong's fiery eyes in a dazzling new glow. Flanders and Liu Erlong exchanged a quick look. Without hesitation, they each clasped their master's hand and pulled him safely behind them. Then, stepping forward and outward, the two formed the front points of a perfect triangle, with Xiaogang at the third. Douluo, Liu Erlong's voice rang out, cold and steely. You'll find it far harder to end us than you imagine, and if we fall, you won't walk away unscathed. Douluo let out a cruel laugh. Just the 3 of you, how dare you flaunt yourselves before me? Erlong, enough talk, Flanders snarled. Xiaogang, initiate the formation. Rather than fully unleash his martial spirit, Flanders drew inward. A surge of golden light burst from his core, arching overhead like a radiant halo. Sun Moon Golden Circle, the 3 chanted in perfect unison. At Flanders' signal, simultaneous flares of golden radiance blossomed around Liu Erlong and Xiaogang as well. The 3 arcs of light swelled, converging to form a glowing triangle, each hero its vertex. Within that triangle, a subtle, coiling dragon pattern shimmered, its power humming with promise and defiance. All at once, the 3 masters were bathed in a shimmering veil of golden light. Flanders and Liu Erlong gently closed their eyes, centering their energy inward, while the 3rd master kept his eyes wide open, his gaze flaring with blinding brilliance. 3-in-1 martial soul fusion? Douluo murmured, genuine surprise in his voice. He had never before witnessed the Golden Iron Triad's secret fusion technique. Then, as if triggered by their combined power, spirals of emerald green gas erupted from each of them, coiling skyward and dissipating into the air. This was the poison from Douluo's lethal soul toxin array surrounding the ice and fire eyes, a trap designed to kill any soul master without his personal antidote. Yet Flanders and his companions had forcibly purged the deadly toxin from their bodies, casting off the poison as easily as one might shake off a chill. A chill of his own ran down Douluo's spine. The 3-in-1 martial soul fusion didn't just amplify their strength, it also purified any poison at its core. Douluo's eyes narrowed. He had finally found the key to breaking their defenses, but could he act before they struck? Douluo paused for only a moment as he watched the 3 of them trigger their strange new phenomenon, and then he let out a soft snort. No matter what tricks the Golden Iron Triangle, Master, Flanders, and Liu Erlong had up their sleeves, they weren't enough to make him hesitate. As a titled Douluo, his pride was unshakable, and he felt no fear. Let's see just how powerful your Trinity Spirit fusion really is. With that, Douluo began to close the distance between himself and the triangle. The instant he moved, a brilliant surge of golden light flared from the master's body, wrapping the Icefire Eye facility in a delicate, shimmering veil. Luo Sampao, the master called, summoning his martial spirit. In a blaze of light, the chubby spirit beast, Luo Sampao, appeared at the center of the golden triangle that the 3 fighters had formed. No sooner had it materialized than 16 soul rings, 4 from each of them, whirled through the air and merged onto its stout, round form. Under the concentration of all those rings, Luo Sampao began to grow instantly. Golden scales rippled across its skin, and its muscles swelled with newfound power, turning the once adorable beast into an awe-inspiring force poised to challenge Douluo. Luo Sampao's body trembled as 2 spiraling horns burst from his forehead. The golden light within the triangular talisman on his chest flared, bathing him in radiant brilliance. One by one, scales cracked along his spine until a pair of massive wings unfurled behind him, each membrane shimmering with latent power. With a thunderous roar, he stretched those wings skyward, and the raw force of his draconic presence rippled outward. Even the soul beasts skirting the edge of Sunset Forest recoiled in awe, their howls betraying an instinctive surrender to this newly arisen golden dragon. Douluo cocked an eyebrow at the display. "So this is the legendary golden holy dragon?" he murmured, unconvinced. The dragon before him glittered with electrical sparks, but it was nowhere near as enormous as the shadow soldier dragon Nash, whom Douluo had faced just 2 days earlier in his human guise. Compared to that towering behemoth, this golden form looked almost modest. A smirk curled Douluo's lips. "I couldn't defeat Nash," he thought, voice low but proud. "How could I possibly lose to a little dragon like you?" With arrogance sparking in his eyes, he stepped forward, ready to test his own strength against Luo Senpao's draconic transformation. A sharp, piercing whistle cut through the air. At Douluo's feet, his 7th soul ring ignited with brilliant light. "7th soul skill, martial soul true body," he declared. Emerald energy burst from his form and coalesced into a colossal serpent. Its prismatic scales shimmered as the great green snake reared halfway off the ground, locking eyes with the distant golden holy dragon. A wave of intense spiritual pressure rolled across the arena, stirring the strange flora at the heart of the yin-yang eyes of ice and fire. Deep within those same yin-yang eyes lay Douluo's private chamber. In its shadowed recesses, the dragon Nash stirred. He lifted his head, the left iris ice blue, the right smoldering crimson, as he surveyed a far corner where faint draconic breaths lingered. "The king remains deep in cultivation," Nash murmured. "Those blind fools wouldn't dare interrupt him." His gaze flicked to Cheng Xiao, still seated in silent meditation with eyes closed. Satisfied, the dark dragon melted back into the shadows. No sooner had Nash departed than countless inky tendrils drifted forth to surround Cheng Xiao. They solidified into silent sentinels, standing guard over their king's unbroken focus. Douluo raised his blade, ready to strike at the golden dragon, but in that instant a sleek black silhouette slipped in beside him. Giant dragon Nash regarded the floating creature with narrowed ice blue and ember red eyes. "Golden dragon?" he mused aloud, suspicion darkening his gaze. Moments later, disdain replaced doubt. Having absorbed the lingering souls of the ice and fire dragon kings, Nash sensed immediately that this golden dragon's blood was tainted. Even infused with 2 residual souls, it fell far short of the raw strength possessed by a true pureblood. "A dragon that can't even master its own lineage," Nash growled. "What business does it have before the real dragon clan?" Though he once served the Dragon Emperor himself, Nash, like all ancient dragons under the Emperor's command, was a pureblood and a master of arcane magic. To him and his kind, any mixed-blood claimant was little more than a pretender. Chapter 140, The Golden Triangle. "Except for the king, I refuse to bow my neck to anyone." Nash, the veteran dragon, glanced up at the golden dragon hovering above and nonchalantly slapped his palm. At once, the bloodline of the Ice and Fire Dragon King surged through him, and crimson light flared around his outstretched hand. The golden dragon, poised to strike Douluo, shuddered violently in midair. Before it could react, a massive claw of living dragon blood materialized from nowhere and slammed into its skull with bone-crushing force. Boom! The shockwave shattered the creature's oppressive aura, and it plunged headlong toward the ground, its twin wings pinned helplessly against its sides. Nash's expression never changed. He stepped onto the battered skull of the fallen golden dragon and vanished in a blink, reappearing high above the clearing. Below, the 3 members of the so-called Golden Triangle exchanged ugly glances. They wanted to intervene, but with Douluo's cold gaze locked on them, and Nash's overwhelming presence on full display, they dared not move. Nash materialized in midair, his massive form hovering against the sky. He lifted his great head and let out a resonant roar that rolled like thunder across the heavens. Though he could have unleashed dragon fear, the draconic clan's most tyrannical power, capable of sowing panic in friend and foe alike, he held back. He dared not disturb Cheng Xiao's cultivation. Still, Nash's voice carried the lingering soul of the Ice and Fire Dragon King he had absorbed. That single cry bore more authority than most dragons could muster in a lifetime. Below him, the Golden Holy Dragon, already pinned beneath one claw, shuddered with primal terror. Its limbs writhed in a futile struggle to break free. Born from the fusion of the three masters' martial souls, the Golden Holy Dragon lacked full draconic intellect and only retained raw, basic abilities. In Nash's original form, one crushing palm would have been enough to end it. Now, empowered by the Ice and Fire King's bloodline, he did not even need to strike. His roar alone, steeped in ancient draconic might, was sufficient to drive the Golden Holy Dragon into helpless submission. He could feel the roar pulsing through his very blood, and the moment it hit him, any thought of resistance vanished. Roar! The Golden Holy Dragon bellowed into the night, a clear admission of surrender to the far mightier Nash dragon hovering above. But Nash paid no heed. With deliberate slowness, the colossal dragon extended one taloned hand and closed it around his smaller kin. In an instant, those claws snapped shut. A blinding flash of golden light filled the sky. The Golden Holy Dragon's radiant aura shattered, its magnificent form unraveling into countless motes of starlight that drifted away into nothingness. Douluo stared, frozen in horror. He had suspected Nash's power, but never imagined it could be so absolute. How is this possible? He whispered, his voice barely audible. Master stood ashen, lips trembling. No, this can't be real, he muttered. It's all illusion. How could our Golden Holy Dragon, so mighty, be extinguished so easily? Before the words were fully out of his mouth, the backlash from the dragon's destruction slammed into the three members of the Golden Iron Triangle. In an instant, each of them vomited blood in 3 violent jets, staggered backward half a dozen paces, and only then found their footing again. They had always prided themselves on their Trinity martial soul fusion technique, convinced it was invincible. Yet just moments ago, that very skill had been unmasked, shattered beyond repair. And all the soul power they'd poured into that fusion? Douluo had won without unleashing a single soul technique of his own. Humiliation burned in their chests, but there was nothing they could do. Their greatest weapon lay in ruins, and their energy was spent. Defeated but defiant, the 3 warriors of the Golden Iron Triangle glared at their victor, forced to acknowledge that today, at least, they had met someone stronger. Nash hovered in midair, his great draconic wings folded close to his sides. His golden eyes narrowed as he raised massive claws, an invisible force coiling around the throats of the 3 Golden Iron Triangle operatives. You 3 have committed an unforgivable crime by disturbing the king's cultivation, he growled. Wait, Nash! Douluo's voice rang out as he darted forward, positioning himself between the dragon and the captives. Don't finish them off. I've just perfected a new poison, and I need live subjects for my experiments. Nash's scaly brow creased in hesitation. As a newly appointed shadow soldier, he knew better than to cross Douluo. His bond with the king was at stake. With a low rumble, he loosened his grip. The 3 operatives collapsed to the ground, coughing and gasping for air. Satisfied, Nash gave them one last disdainful glance, then spread his wings and vanished in a rush of wind. The gust swept across the clearing, tousling Douluo's hair as silence fell once more. Douluo plucked the air twice, as casually as if he were flicking dust from his sleeve, then swept a mocking glance over the 3 soul masters of the Golden Triangle. I always heard you Golden Triangle people were formidable, he sneered. Yet here you are, looking more pathetic than yesterday's leftovers. How on earth have you survived this long? One of the masters, his throat raw from exertion, stepped forward, voice trembling with restrained fury. Douluo, don't get cocky. We haven't lost to you yet. Once our soul power fully restores, we'll face you again in open combat. Then everyone will see who's truly stronger. Douluo let out a harsh, scornful laugh. Open combat? Spare me the platitudes. You wouldn't know real power if it danced naked in front of you. I can already tell you've inherited none of the old Dragon Yuan's talents. Fine, if you're so eager for a fair fight, I'll grant your wish. But first, let me demonstrate why you're nothing but level 29 nobodies. With a flick of his wrist, he unleashed a silent, suction-like force. In an instant, one of the masters, Xiao, was yanked off his feet and slammed against the ground before Douluo. Douluo, Release him! Another of the Golden Triangle Masters cried out, desperation flashing in his eyes. Douluo bent down, his grin cold as ice. Speak up when you can, he taunted, but first, watch how a true soul master deals with worthless pests. He raised his hand again, shadows coiling around his fingertips as he prepared to finish his demonstration. Then kill me first if you can, Liu Erlong screamed, lunging forward as Douluo hauled his master, Yu Xiaogong, off his feet. Douluo spared him a bored glance. Kill you? Far too easy. With a brutal kick, he sent Yu Xiaogong sprawling. In the same instant, he strode up to Liu Erlong and Flender. A hiss of dark green gas dribbled from Douluo's lips and sluiced into their open mouths. Within seconds, both men stopped mid-breath, their eyes glazing over, and collapsed in limp, unmoving heaps. Turning back, Douluo loomed over his terrified captive. Under the moonless sky, his features were twisted into a ghastly mask. So you wanted a quick death? Let's see how brave you are now. I haven't lost my edge. Time stretched on until the first pale fingers of dawn touched the sky. Beside the fabled spring of ice and fire, a horrifying tableau greeted the morning light. 4 figures swung naked from a sturdy oak that overhung the steaming water, their clothes draped like ragged banners on the lower branches. Among them, Yu Xiaogong's once black hair had turned a sickly shade of green. He hung there, eyes squeezed shut, moaning in relentless agony. A thin rivulet of blood trickled from his eyes and mouth, but it wasn't enough to kill him. Liu Erlong, Flanders, Tong San, and the man himself hung naked from the great tree at the Eye of Ice and Fire, all victims of Douluo's latest experiment. To witness the full progression of his new poison, Douluo had stripped them bare and even diluted the toxin, so they'd live long enough for him to observe every agonizing detail. Damn, I really misjudged him, Douluo muttered, spitting out his disgust as he studied the so-called master without peers. For all his cruelty, he hadn't expected a reaction like this. The man's torso gleamed unnaturally smooth, as if something essential had vanished entirely. Worse still, the poison had turned his hair a sickly shade of green, giving him an almost alien appearance. Douluo leaned in, curiosity warring with revulsion. Here was an unprecedented resistance to his toxin, and a terrifying clue that he might have unleashed something he could never fully control. Yet the scientist in him burned to learn more, even as a chill ran down his spine. Douluo had been through too much to be startled now. Years of bloodshed and betrayal had sharpened his nerves to steel. If this captive weren't important, the master would have hacked him to bits with that filthy blade already. Instead, Douluo stood calm, one hand shielding his left eye, the other gripping the coiling green energy whip. "You worthless cur," he hissed, flicking the lash twice through the stale air to test its weight. Then, with a sudden, whip-crack motion, he drove it across the man's bare back. The captive's scream echoed like a pig at slaughter. Stripped of armor and clothing, he had no defense as each strike scored fresh red welts that bloomed into purple bruises under Douluo's increasing force. Another shrill cry cut through the chamber. Liu Erlong, naked, bound, and seething, could no longer watch in silence. Ignoring his own shame, he bellowed, "Douluo, that's enough. You may be fierce, but you'll not lay a finger on my man." At once, Douluo halted mid-swing. The whip's emerald glow pulsed as he turned toward Flanders, who hung just beside Liu Erlong. A slow, mocking grin curved his lips. "Your man?" Douluo drawled, tapping the whip's tip against Flanders's bruised arm. A trickle of blood welled where the lash made contact. "Are you sure you mean this, runt, or is your affection reserved for some other worthless scrap?" Chapter 12, Blood and Whips. "You're worthless!" Liu Erlong's shout rang out, his face flaming. He lunged forward, only to see Douluo's mocking grin deepen. "Ha! This is fantastic," Douluo crowed. "I've never seen anything like it." With a casual flick of his wrist, the whip cracked down on Liu Erlong's younger sister, Erlongmei. She screamed, folding to her knees as pain lanced through her arm. "Stop it, Douluo," Liu Erlong's voice wavered. "She's only spirit level 29. If you strike her again, you'll kill her." "Tsk, no tears until the coffin," Douluo scoffed, stepping closer. He lashed out once more, this time grazing Liu Erlong's lip. Dark blood welled at the corner of his mouth. "You call yourself a man?" Douluo taunted. "Pathetic." He paused, whip raised. "Since you want to play hero," another crack of leather met flesh. "Ugh, no, please." Erlongmay whimpered, her free hand clutching the fresh welt. The courtyard fell silent, then exploded with a single roar. Dugubo! Flanders charged forward, eyes blazing. You're a titled Douluo, yet you bully a defenseless girl? If you truly want to fight, face me! Dugubo straightened, whip coiled at his side. The afternoon sun glinted off its black leather as he regarded Flanders coolly. Around them, every eye held its breath, waiting to see if the whip would fall again, or if a new battle was about to begin.